I'm Merle, obviously. I played The Watcher mostly, but recently, and I have been going for like win streaks with Watcher, but recently I have sort of decided I'm mostly still going to be playing Watcher, but playing it in like a slightly less like serious capacity. Not that I'm not going to be trying to win, but more so that I'm going to take some of the pressure off myself because I feel like I have a lot more fun playing the game when I don't put so much pressure on myself, and I have a lot more fun streaming when I don't put so much pressure on myself. And at this point, I feel like I don't really have anything to prove to anybody in terms of like uh, how good of a player I am. So we're just like having fun playing some like really high level Spire, but you know again, not trying to put too much pressure on myself. And I am thinking about branching out and playing other characters on occasion. Probably every stream is going to be like a Watcher game, and then like maybe a game with another character as well. So yeah, that's it. Just some more A20 high level Spire content. Usually stream like late in the evenings, like US time, or early in the mornings for you Euros out there. And yeah, it's a good time. If you like Beardy's content, you probably like my content. Request beta art, me. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't think Merle has any beta art, but I haven't played the character enough to like get to the heart yet. Just I couldn't make it. This guy he's a
Oh
tough
my
nut to
god.
crack.
Love when the deck comes together and you just can't stop smiling. Yeah. Sometimes that just happens. Oh yeah. And co-op stuff. I've done like 2 co-ops in my last 3 streams, and I freaking love co-ops so much. Last night we had an amazing co-op with Burnface. Was just
Mm-hmm.
like very, 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 very fun. Not just because the run ended up being really stupid, but also just because like Burn's super cool, and we had a great time just like hanging out and stuff.
Yeah, I've been like me and Burn have also been trying to line some stuff up so that we can do things, but I don't know how you actually were able to catch her with some free time last night because like she's super busy right now. But
Yeah.
that
We
was
were just like
awesome.
playing Among Us,
It,
and I was like, "Hey, Burn, you want to do a co-op?" And she's like,
it was
"You know
just
what?
it's just a
Screw
little
it. It's
off the
Friday night.
cuff.
Let's go." Yeah. It just kind of worked. Sometimes you just gotta shoot.
Yeah, and there's gonna be more co-op coming, I think, because I know Merle is gonna keep doing it, and I've been like, I've got like a backlog myself of some co-op that I need to try and catch up on, but I keep putting it off.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be doing a purple co-op today after we get
Yep.
through part 1 of this discussion. We'll be doing a purple co-op today, so if you guys want to hang around after the discussion and watch a purple run between myself and Merle, then you're gonna have that content coming at you hard and fast. So once again, welcome to everybody coming by to hang out and hear the chat. I want to make sure that you'll understand that this is as it's a discussion and a debate because we do not 100% see eye to eye. There is not wholesale agreement between myself and Merle about everything. This
It'd be kind of
discussion
weird
is
if
going.
that was the case.
Yeah, it would be kind of weird if it was just a full on, just everything like, yep, you're right, I agree, There'd be nothing to talk about here, really, for the most part.
True.
But one of the most interesting things about this game is the diversity of opinions and feelings and beliefs about strategy and how to evaluate things for the whole community. So, I want to remind everybody that the floor is open for questions throughout the entire discussion. Just the whole way through. If you guys have questions that you want answers to, we will do our absolute best to address things. Try to keep your questions off of Boss Swap in particular, because that is part 2. And we're going to
Yeah.
set up a part 2 covering the Boss Swap part of this discussion and on a future date. So if you
Yeah.
guys want to ask Merle a question specifically, then feel free to tag him. If you want to ask me a question specifically, feel free to tag me. Otherwise, we're going to be reading the chat as we talk, and we're going to be looking for questions, and we're going to try and address those as they come up. Try to keep them roughly related to the current like part of the discussion at hand. Try not to branch off into like way off into the atmosphere with a different like blessing entirely or something. Try to keep it a little bit more on topic so that we can keep everything flowing along well. And I'm not sure how much else there is to add, Merle.
No,
I think
I
maybe
think we should just
we're about ready to just
get
start
right
diving
into it.
in.
Yeah.
So, in that case, welcome everybody. Good to see you all. We're going to talk about Niao's blessings today.
non-boss swap
Chevler. The non-boss swap blessings for sure. The boss swap is going to be its own whole separate discussion, like I said, because it merits that. It merits that 100%. And the reason that we decided to do this is because all of the different blessings, like they, for the most part, they're pure upside, and when everything is essentially just like a bonus, an upside, something to favor the player as much as possible, then it's really hard to look at everything on, and evaluate all of those options and say like this is the one that I should take or that is the one that I should take, because you cannot, like, it clouds your mind when you're looking at everything and they're all positive interactions. Like you look at a map or you look at a cardboard screen or an event that you're in or whatever, and it's like there's obvious deltas between like how good or like this thing is good, this thing is bad. It's very binary in a lot of situations. But with the Niao blessings, they're all like different flavors and different strengths of good.
Yep. Well, and also you have no context. Like, it's the very start of the run, so there's actually just nothing to go by in terms of like, oh, okay, I picked up this card early, so therefore I would really like to do XYZ, right? If you don't have any of that, then in a sense it makes it easier for us to evaluate, because we can always evaluate this knowing that they're all always on equal terms, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the other options in the game essentially, like, what is the like probably the most complex thing in the game outside of picking your starting bonus is your pathing, and then your combat prowess, like your lines in your combats they have that same dichotomy of being like different weights and different values of good versus better versus like bad versus worse, instead of being a very binary decision. But like most of the other decisions in the game are pretty binary until you come up against like very excuse me until you come up against very difficult like card award screens.
Yeah. Right,
so I see a couple of different questions,
started.
and let's start with the fact that Chevler has been hounding us about Niao's Lament. Praetoria, we are not covering separate characters right here. There will be a little bit of commentary on a few blessings about like different characters, because I think that they're valued very differently versus other classes. Niao's Lament is actually the first topic of discussion, Chevler, so listen close. Curse for a Blessing, Azoth. That one is a little bit later in the... Let's actually have that marked off as a little bit of a special discussion to have later in the stream here. We're going to get to that part. The ones that include, like, that have baked-in downsides, those are coming up as, like, their own little bit of a segment after we get through the pure upside ones.
Yep.
And I think that catches us up on chat for now. So Meryl, why don't you open us up on the Niao's Lament and let us get right in to the nuts
Sure.
of it there.
All right. So, Niao's Lament, just making sure that we all know what it does. It makes enemies in your first 3 combats have 1 HP. Now, like, it's easy to say that, but I think for the purposes of this discussion, I think we need to quantify what exactly that can do. So, in terms of the absolute best thing that it can do, and sort of the absolute worst thing that it can do, right? So, obviously, the idea with this is that you want to try to snipe an elite. If you can get an elite fight in your first 3 combats and have that fight be at 0, basically just a free fight, that is what people think about, and that's why people think that this might be a strong option. Because obviously elite fights are difficult, especially your first elite fight is usually quite difficult, and you are probably going to lose a certain amount of HP, whereas when you obviously go into it with only your enemy starting with 1 HP, you're like very, very, very unlikely to lose any HP in that fight. So in that sense, it's a very, very tangible benefit that people can go for and get and be like, oh wow, this is what Niao's Lament did, and I feel like that's really good. But we need to sort of like actually quantify what that means. And what that means is that you took a path that basically ignored card rewards because you have you're not taking normal combats in order to get there. So you've ignored card rewards. That's the big thing. And you have possibly pathed through like some question marks that are not really incredibly helpful for your deck early on, or a shop that didn't really do that much for you in order to get to this elite, right? And so let's talk about what it actually means that you have accomplished when you kill that elite, and the first like 2 fights, let's say, without taking any damage, because that's really what we're talking about here. Is we're talking about the ability to get through the first 3 combats without taking any damage, right? And when that happens, the absolute best thing that Niao could be is like allowing you to smith at 2 campfires. Like at its absolute best, that's what it is. The problem with that is that you don't have good cards because you haven't taken combats, right? So the HP lost or the HP gained from Niao's Lament, right, is essentially just, again, not resting. Potentially, it's not even like guaranteed, because you might not have lost that HP if you'd taken a different line, right? So it's at its absolute best, it's 2 upgrades, and 2 upgrades to cards that you might not necessarily even really care about upgrading, because it's not guaranteed that you're going to find cards early on that really, really care about upgrades.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my general. And then at worst, right, you just get your first 3 hallways sniped, and then you have no benefit from it at all, basically. So yeah, it's there's, I mean, it's just like on average very bad because of those reasons.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much on the same page. I think that Niao's Lament tricks people because it has a fun reward that it provides the player, and that is like not part of what this discussion is about. So that's something that I forgot to bring up, Merle, was that this discussion is centered around kind of a win rate perspective. It has nothing to do with what is fun or not fun. It needs to be like kind of in terms of like, and nothing about this can ever be completely unbiased. Nothing about this can ever be like completely what's the word I'm looking for, Merle?
I mean,
Objective. Nothing about it can be
oh,
completely objective.
sure.
There's a lot of subjective value and feelings that go into all of these things, and Nial's Lament, I think, is the one that gets players the absolute most, especially as a new player when you're in the lower ascensions or non-ascension at all, because you are incentivized to just kind of fly through the game. Like, you don't have to be great at the combats. You don't have to be optimal with your relic bar. You don't have to have the best cards, because
Yep.
the way that all of the enemies and combats and stuff work as a lower level ascension player is that they do not actually like challenge a high level player anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Nial's Lament tricks you as a new player into like feeling like you get a lot of value out of it, which is not
Yep.
actually there. Once you
Yep.
hit like once you hit okay, so and this really only applies after like Ascension 17 or 18, like when the elites and the combats all start getting harder and those ascensions start stacking together. Before that, probably you could just take Nial's Lament every time it's offered and fly through Act 1 and just not care. It almost doesn't matter. Like, you still need to be good at the game at this point. The Ascension level is
Sure.
too high. The patterns are a little bit too strong for you to just kind of disrespect the Spire anymore. But when you're on a level that is allowed to kind of disrespect the Spire at lower ascensions, Nial's Lament gives you that feeling of like immediate payback and lots of fun, and you get to just fly through those really early lame combats. You get like
Yep.
free relics. It lets you look at all kinds of events most of the time. You'll
Mm-hmm.
remember a
Well,
whole
and
bunch
not
of
not to
runs where you
mention,
fly through a shop and get you see really cool cards or something, or you just feel good
right.
about a super early strike remove instead of other options that you know, you can't afford in the shop, and all those things come together to combine and make this feeling for you that you have there's a really big return on the 1 HP combat snipes that you get to do, which in reality is holding your snowball effect back, and it's pushing it to the end of Act 1 instead of letting you start work on that in the early part of the act.
Right, right. So I just want to quickly address, like, a lot of people are saying like, okay, well, you get that elite snipe and it's good, right? The point that we're making is that it's even at its absolute best, it still doesn't compare favorably to other things that you can get from Neo, right? Like, at its absolute best, you snipe two elites. How often does that happen? It's incredibly rare. I mean, I guess if you really want to meme, at its absolute best, you snipe a boss, but um, like, the thing is that that is so stupidly rare. And the point is that even if you do that, right, you're still sacrificing pathing on early floors, because like Beardy was talking about, you give up power level. You're not building your deck early, right? So not only are you giving up on the possibility that your bonus is going to help you throughout the entire game with either um like a gold reward or a boss swap, which we're not going to talk about, but you're giving up on that, right? And then you're talking about the fact that you're compromising your early game, which is probably the most important part. I'd also like to quickly touch on with Lament the fact that because newer players tend to probably die in Act 1 a lot more, um, they have a lot more exposure to Lament because of the way that the system works. So when you have a lot more exposure to Lament, you are more likely to, I guess, like, notice it and rate it higher, because you just play with it more, right?
Yeah, Lament also has like an obvious a feedback loop where you bounce through these easy combats, you get an elite snipe, you get what is essentially a free relic for it, and all of that other stuff.
Yep.
So like it gives you that like that feeling of like very strong and instant feedback that doesn't exist in reality, because it's very short term and short sighted, and it like an instant gratification kind of feedback loop instead of a long term winning strategy.
It's also very like confirmation biasy as well, because it's like you always just, when you think about Lament, you think about the best situation that Lament ever was for you, basically, right?
Yeah, and like look at your run last night, Merle, when you started the co-op with Bird. Like that was a throwaway run, but the seed was absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
But if you had chosen any other blessing there, it would have been probably just flat out stronger than Lament turned out to be. The only thing that but however, it was an absolutely insane seed for Lament specifically, because you were able to go to like floor 10 or something for a burning elite snipe.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty nuts from that perspective.
But any other blessing there was probably like just flat out stronger. The only problem with it is that maybe you wouldn't have had like the guts to go for the green key in that Act 1 if you didn't have the chance of getting it for essentially free.
And yeah, that's the thing. Like the ultimate point with a lot of these things is that you could take like no blessing and still win runs. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like optimizing for win rate, right? So when you're talking about that, you need to think about these things in terms of like, yes, it has upside. It's just like pure upside, but there are other things that are just like better overall for win rate. Anyway, I think that we've like slammed this into the ground enough. We should probably move on, or else this discussion's literally going to take all day.
Which I mean, that's one thing that I addressed with you. That's one thing that I addressed with you when we started lining this up, was that like this discussion can literally take all day. Like we could go 12 hours on this, no problem. We're gonna try not to. Let's answer one question here. DeWall asks, can we clarify if this is a choice of 4 blessings or when it's a pick of 2? And my answer to that is that it doesn't matter.
I mean, it does matter in the sense that like you always take Lament when it's 2, but we're only talking about like what you don't think
no 99% of the time
max over
99% of the time max HP is the same amount of HP that Lament saves.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can respect that. I mean, unless the path is like really good for sniping elites, then maybe you do it. But I don't know.
There's that 1% of a quadrillion seeds. There's that 1% of seeds where the elite snipes were on the best possible path at the same time, and allowed you to get like all of the value in the act, that it doesn't matter. So like you can get a better Act 1 out of Lament when what Praetorius said is true, that it has to provide what is essentially like the best possible outcome in terms of pathing as well as your snipes and stuff.
Lament is the relic that gives you 3 1 HP fights at the start, yeah?
Hi, Alika. Good to see you, friend. And everybody else. I'm not getting to say hi to everybody that's popping in. Me and Merle are both like really deep into this chat. We've talked about this like multiple times offline already, and we keep going. We keep going.
Yeah.
So I think that does, though. I think you're right that covers pretty much everything there is to cover about Lament. Like that last point about the fact that you sacrifice like pathing value just to get Lament value is like, that's where I think the biggest trap of it really, really is, right? And that's something that we kind of addressed when talking about the, pathing away from from like early card rewards and stuff to try and get Lament snipe value, all of that stuff. Like it applies in general, but the one thing that can make up for Lament is sacrifice those first 5 floors of value to get Lament value, but translate that into a top half of the act that gives you the value back. And you can go dig that out of, floors 8 through 14 or 13.
Well, and you don't even need to do that. Just translate that value into what did Lament actually do for you, which is at best 2 upgrades, right? Which like isn't even as good as, some of the better blessings.
Yeah, Praetoria, exactly what you're saying is like I'm trying to address that with credit to you for bringing that up. So I think that does cover everything about Lament, like in the most standard terms. But like I said,
that's definitely one of the more complicated ones as well.
Yeah, it is one of the more complicated ones. We're gonna go through some of these other ones a little bit faster for sure. But the yeah, Duke, that was another thing. We're actually gonna get into max HP real quick next. I think max HP on average is the same value as Lament, at least in terms of HP saved, or like the amount of HP that you get to your like first campfire or whatever with. It's roughly the same. And then the difference between the two at the end of the act is also essentially the same, because if you have to rest at the end of the act you took a max HP blessing, then you probably also have to rest at the end of the act with a Lament blessing. And if you just get to upgrade all the way through the act, max HP and well-played fights is probably exactly the same. So you have there's a delta of like 5, maybe like 8 HP or something between the two blessings throughout the whole Act 1.
Right. The one thing that I would say is that certain characters struggle with early combats a little bit more than others, like mainly Silent and like Jawworm, and you could actually with bad draw order take like 20 damage to Jawworm, and I think like with excessively bad draw order and bad pattern, you could take that much damage to Jawworm as Silent.
Yeah, it is absolutely possible, but it also means that you have to, and you can't fully evaluate this like on turn 1, turn 2, or whatever. Like you need to see a shuffle or something before you can really start to get nervous about that. But I can't remember the last time that I took more than 12 to Jawworm as any class, period. And those are especially bad draw orders. You just have to be able to evaluate that fact and see that it's coming up, and mitigate that by knowing that I have to trade down a little HP to get an extra strike in here.
Sure, okay, but like let's say worst case scenario, you get, your first 3 fights are the 3, normal pool fights, right? And you get like, let's say Double Slime, Jawworm, and Cultist. You get bad draw orders on all of them. You could take 30 damage in your first 3 fights, right? Potentially. It's not like impossible for that to happen. Is it likely? No. But it's important to have this like discussion. So like Lament basically means that it's impossible for that to happen. Now, how likely is that to happen? Well, it's fairly unlikely. And I think Silent would probably be like the one class where you would consider this, because like her early fights are really bad a lot of the times. I mean, sometimes they're okay, but she has the most potential, I think, to struggle in early fights. Watcher has the least. And Defect, you can like dual cast your Lightning Orb, which is really cool. So the max HP is probably just like strictly better for all classes except for Silent, and because like Ironclad's like healing back, right? Anyway, so the max HP is probably strictly better for all classes except for Silent, and then what I think is that Silent, it's probably strictly better for Silent too, but there's just like a little bit more of a consideration, especially if you're trying to do like a difficult path, potentially like. The guarantee that you can get through those first 3 fights with 0 HP loss is potentially worth it in order to take a path that's a little bit harder, more consistent.
there I have said no to max HP is silent on multiple occasions, but even without the possibility of an elite snipe or a very low likelihood of an elite snipe, because it would mean that I get to take the much, much harder path if I offered some decent rewards in those first three screens
Yeah.
for regular combats. And in that case, max HP makes less sense than Niao's Lament. But max HP also provides kind of some latent value in some of the events as well. It provides like kind of a 1-to-1 HP trade on like the card remove for 10% of HP or the golden idol max HP. It's pretty good as a it's pretty much equivalent to Lament as the Shining Light for roughly 20 HP for two
Hmm.
upgrades. Like most of the stuff is fully like essentially like equivalent value. It's
Yeah, we're not
mostly
talking about
mostly
Lament anymore.
equivalent
We're talking
value.
about max HP now.
Yeah, it's
So
this is the max HP part of it when because and it,
yeah.
it sounds a lot like Lament because mostly max HP only comes up in terms of having a blessing where Lament is your other option. This
Right.
is not about Lament. It just like we have to kind of compare them back to back together because of the fact that you like it's almost never ever max HP on a four blessing screen.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's like, I mean, well, again, we're gonna get to boss swap later, but like, if max HP is your best of the top three, then it's always boss swap, like always. Um,
Yeah, so
but
I think that like the standard like feeling overall is that um, lament is such a trap in
hmm
general that it needs to
hmm
be exceptionally good path to take that
yeah,
versus max HP or any other blessing. So max HP, in my opinion, is the correct option when you have two blessings almost every time. And like the only exceptions to that are probably silent. Probably
hmm
silent. In every other situation you should go max HP.
yeah,
For like and like the reasoning for that is really all in the lament part of the discussion anyway.
yep,
So we're not going to continue to revisit all of those ideas again. It's essentially the same talk, except in terms of like why you would value max HP instead. So the next one that we wrote down here is the transform or choose a card option, which can also be a colorless card option.
yep,
And this one has a little bit of special attention because choose a card works exactly like a regular card reward screen, and that it can increase your rare card drop rate percentage, which is not a negligible like value of choose a card.
absolutely.
And also choose a card or transform. The idea behind those are all essentially like fixer uppers for the deck for floor one fights, where your strikes and defense are super subpar but just enough to get by. So
Hmm.
that's essentially what they offer. Like in totality, is they kind of smooth out your floor one fight.
Right. Yep. That is very true. Um, and yeah, transform. The problem with transform is that you
It's
like if you're
variance.
playing a class like Silent, right? There's variants. If you're playing a class like Silent, where Silent has some really awesome cards, but Silent also has a lot of just like very, very, very terrible cards, even cards that are arguably in the early game worse than Strike and Defend. Um, so transform, and all classes do have that. I mean, of course, all classes will have cards that you'd be really, really happy to high roll into. But for the start of the game, the number of cards that's actually good gets a lot lower, right? There a lot of the class's best cards aren't actually that great for the start of the game for various reasons. For instance, like Wraith Form, great card, not really a card you want in Act 1. It can be decent in some fights, but like in general, like especially when you're on 3 energy in Act 1, like it's not like the most impactful Act 1 card.
Yeah, Wraithform in
Um,
specific, I think, is going to come up when we get to the choose a rare.
yeah, for sure.
But like that's
and then hold on,
like, you
let's
can
just talk about like
transform
colorless
you can
for a second.
transform into rares, but you cannot choose a rare from the non-rare blessing. Like, it has to be choose a rare card in the
Yeah,
Niao blessing. You can get transform into random rare, right?
yeah.
Or no,
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 you
no, no,
can
no.
get no, you can get random
You can be
rare.
just, yeah. You There's a random rare option, so
You can
can get like a floor
but
zero Wraith
that's
form out of random rare or choose a rare.
yeah,
But
yeah. But choose a
otherwise,
rare
like,
is for
yeah, it's not possible to
downside.
see rare cards from from a card reward screen on floor zero.
Correct. So yeah, increasing your rare percent chance is good, and also like choose a colorless is just like horrible because in general, colorless card you can't get a rare one, which is a thing, and like in general, the common, the uncommon colorless are just like that pool's really mediocre. Um, so yeah, you're oftentimes you're gonna get 3 options that are like all actively bad for your deck currently. So
Right.
yeah,
The choose a colorless card is probably just like a straight up skip. Just like, you just never
yeah,
take it.
yeah,
Like, there are technically fine ones. Like, a Flash of Steel is like okay. A finesse is mostly okay. But like,
mm-hmm.
a lot of colorless uncommons are skills, which, how Act One disincentivizes you from taking skills because Gremlin Knob exists, and you want
Yep,
to like, the colorless pool is just like very weighted towards skills in like the anyway, and like, their attacks in its Flash of Steel, Swift Strike, Dramatic Entrance, and then in the rare pool there's Hand of Greed, and like, I can't even think of more attacks than that in the uncommon
yeah,
pool, period.
yeah, yeah,
So choose a colorless is pretty much just like, boop, get out of there. Um,
yep. And
that's as
transform
off.
is just like
That's
too
a rare
RNG
card.
heavy.
Yeah, transform
It's
is
just
2 RNG. So the raw regular choose a card is like the best of these in general
yeah, right.
terms. It's kind of fine. Transform does provide value in terms of a strike remove, essentially.
Yep.
It doesn't reduce the size of the deck, but it does provide the the pseudo strike remove value, or in some cases defend remove.
So Azoth and Hasp, you literally can't get those from from the reward that we're talking about. The choose a colorless card for no downside can't have rare cards in it.
Yeah.
So you can't get Apo and Hand of Greed from this option.
The spread on transforms making your deck better or worse
I mean, we could
is,
literally go into all the compendiums and figure this out, but
we could, but it's not worth actually going over all of the
yeah,
cards. Just
yeah,
let it suffice to say that transform is very strong in general terms because you're removing a strike or a defend and replacing it with something that is almost universally just better and more useful. But
hmm
to start with it on floor zero, it's not that good.
yeah.
Like, your strikes and defends are already balanced to handle your easy pool combats. That's about all they're really balanced for. Everything else, they're super
Oh, that's a good
underpowered.
idea.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, we could
probably
just
should have
bring
it
up
now. I
the.
have to do.
Why don't we just put up the document on the
Should
thing or
just.
something? I don't know.
I mean, something to fill in the gap, I guess, is fine here. just because there's nothing else to show here. So anyway, like we said, choose a card is probably the best one. But what you guys are going to get to see here is I'm going to highlight the current option that we have some like rough outline notes. Most of this comes off the cuff. We've spent like 3 pretty long chats offline kind of talking over these things already. So we have the ideas mostly in our head, and we just made some notes here to keep everything on track so you guys can keep up with what's going on there, I suppose. Like we said, choose a card, probably the best one of those options. So if it comes up, it's worth a consideration. If you're feeling lucky and you want a high roll, go with the RNG Transform. I have been informed by Reddit that Transform is the highest win rate option out there. I don't know if it's Ascension 20 or like just all Ascensions or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's just all Ascensions. So if you're playing lower Ascensions and you just transform out, like maybe you get something really cool and you have a really fun run. Like we said before, this is win rate focused. This is not fun focused, unfortunately, unless your
on average,
idea of fun is winning. It's on good, average, but like it's good, but it's not good on floor 0 very much.
Right.
There's like, there's so many misses.
Right. But it's still on average good on floor 0. The thing is that it's
always up against better blessings.
Exactly. So, random. Right. So let's talk about random common relic, because I think random common card is not a thing, right? It's random rare card or random common relic.
Yeah, that was something that we couldn't remember. We like
as far as no downside,
the wiki has it mixed up too.
Yeah,
the wiki has it mixed up too.
It's random rare card, so you can get a random rare card for no downside, right?
Right.
Random rare card probably is something that's worth going into the compendium and discussing, and random common relic is also something that's worth going into the compendium and discussing.
Let's do the Let's do the card one first, guys. Let's look at random rare card option in the compendium here.
For all classes.
Card library.
Rarity. Other one. There we go. Boom.
So,
there's 16
random
rare cards for each class, I believe.
And keep this stuff in mind, guys, because there is also choose a rare that will come up with a downside later.
Yep.
And
which is very different.
We'll have to... We'll have to reevaluate that in different terms, but for the time being, we want to hopefully not have to go back over all of the cards again. So keep that in mind. DeWall, you're right. The option to see a random rare card is often very fun. You can get a lot of really cool stuff. But
so Ironclad has a lot of insane ones.
Unfortunately, let's start with the ones that are just like curses that you have to carry pretty much.
Okay,
and those
Barricade. Demon Form.
Demon Form is almost impossible to get into play on Act 1 anywhere except Lagavulin.
Yeah, except for
Brutality. I think Brutality is more okay than not okay, but it can
still be like a very low roll.
You do have Burning Blood when you take this option though, which makes it actually a lot better than it feels.
Sure.
But it probably immediately steals an upgrade slot.
Right. It's like a low roll though. So like the bad ones though. Okay, Barricade, Demon Form, Juggernaut, Double Tap, and probably Berserk.
Yeah, so now these are mostly pretty debatable. Barricade is not debatable. It's bad Act 1. You cannot get enough block going in Act 1 because you're not allowed to by Gremlin Knob, period. And then in the Act 1 boss, you're not allowed to get enough block going in Hexaghost or Slime Boss. So Barricade is actively detrimental to almost every floor in the act, period. The only time that you
Right.
can do barricade stuff is like Lagavulin, and
Yep. Oh,
that's
limit
for
break is also
one
really
turn.
bad.
Limit break is bad because it's
You don't have any
like
strength.
there's a draw order problem there, and it takes until like somewhere into Act 2 before you really are able to fix up draw order issues, which makes limit break very hard to carry through
Yep.
until your deck is a lot stronger. Juggernaut, same problem as Barricade, that you just don't make enough block, and 5 damage isn't, and random damage isn't enough excuse to be making block willy-nilly. Like, you just need to usually trade HP for damage instead of favoring like blocking a little bit more most of the time. But
Hmm.
Juggernaut changes that a little bit, but it's not enough damage to make the difference, and you need to target your damage in Act 1 pretty specifically.
Right.
It's
So
very, very important to hit specific enemies in Act 1, more so, I think, than in a lot of the other combats through the later acts.
yep. So let's talk about. So we have what? One barricade. Like berserk. Corruption is like fine. It's actually kind of nice to have floor 0 because you can try to build your deck around it a little bit. It's okay for the early combats because you can play corruption and like 2 defends on a turn and like be okay. It's not great, but it's not like bad, right? So demon
Yeah.
form is bad. Double tap is bad because of Knob existing and because you don't have any attack except for bash that synergize with it, so it like really messes up with your draw order. Exhume is bad because you don't have anything to exhume. Limit break is bad because you don't have any strength. Juggernaut is bad. So what is that, like 6 bad cards? No, 7 bad cards.
Roughly half of them. It's
Right, roughly
one,
half of them
two,
are like not great.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pretty much are like, it's pretty hard to debate that these Barricade, Berserk, Brutality, Demon Form, Double Tap,
Right.
Exhume, Juggernaut, Limit Break,
Right.
which would be 8 of
Yep.
the rare pool, which is roughly half of it, if not exactly half. I can't remember. 5, 10, 15, 16, exactly half of it.
Yep.
It's just really hard to justify how you carry those through from floor 0.
Yep.
But you can absolutely make it work. So don't just give up on a run because you transformed for fun and you got something that like it's really hard to play around.
Right.
You
But
can
it's
deal
like
with it.
you can
It's
make
not that
tiny
bad.
house work too, right?
Yeah.
But then let's talk about the good ones, because the good ones are insane. Like Bludgeon, insane. Feed, insane. Fiendfire, insane. Immolate, insane. Impervious, insane. Offering, insane. Reaper, insane. Right?
Absolutely. All of them are like, Ironclad pretty much has a 50% hit rate, and I would even give benefit of the doubt to Brutality, Berserk, and Double Tap, which makes this
Yeah.
option. I prefer Choose a Rare a lot more, but random rare can be fine. It can be absolutely fine for Ironclad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when you consider the fact that like swapping on Ironclad is really nice, but he also very, very much benefits from getting that passive heal. And yeah, I mean the percentages on this work out to be like pretty solid, especially especially when you're taking no downside. So this has to be like a consideration. It's like a lot of the stuff that we talked about so far is almost never considered over better options. This is one of the better options that you would consider, basically. We're not mentioning the red text next to Choose a Rare. We're not talking about
Praetoria.
Choose a Rare right now.
Yeah,
We're talking about-
this is about random rare.
Yeah.
The downsides are coming up later in the discussion. We're gonna get through all of the non-downside stuff.
Yeah,
Pew
so I
Pew,
guess we'll just move
Impervious,
over to
Impervious is
Stalin,
insane. It's
Oh,
insane
oh, yeah, no, we said that,
for
we said
Act
that.
1. Yeah,
Oh, so
it's
good.
Impervious
So
Pew
good.
Pew because Act 1 asks you in combat and easy pulls to pretty much block 10 to 15 every turn, and in
Right.
hard pulls, the game asks you to block like roughly 20 to
Yep.
even up to like 25 almost. Like Jawworm plus Acid Slime can come at
Yep.
you turn 1 for 12 and 12. And like
Yep.
Impervious. And then in the elite fights, this full blocks anything that the elites throw at you on the
Anything.
turn that it's drawn. everything that
Yep.
it throws at you. It's just, yeah, essentially
Except for
a
like
buffer
a
in Act
super
1.
super souped up Gremlin Knob. But if you have a super souped up Gremlin Knob and you have to block him, you're probably dead anyway.
Yeah, something else has gone terribly wrong there. But
Yep.
even in that case, like sometimes Impervious can be just
Yep.
the card you need to survive that one extra
Exactly.
turn to get through the vulnerable and win next turn.
Yep.
Lagavulin debuff? Nope, this still blocks it.
No.
Lagavulin buff, this blocks for 28 and then 26.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you're double debuffed by Lagavulin, so what? I'm still blocking 26 for 2 energy. Like, still, it actually, like, Lagavulin debuff is actually has no effect on Impervious, even unupgraded Impervious, because you're still full blocking, even after 5 debuffs, which, I mean, you're obviously dead after 5 debuffs, but after 5 debuffs, Impervious still full blocks.
Oh, he means Duke means when you draw it on the debuff turn, which is yeah.
Oh, sure.
You know,
but I mean, yeah,
really,
okay,
it's not
but,
about
like, if
draw
you draw
order though.
Right, if you draw block cards on a turn where, like, that doesn't mean block cards are bad, right? Like,
Pew
you just
pew
have
draw
to put
like
block cards in your deck anyway.
taking 0 damage for an entire turn and outputting 6 in Act 1 on almost every floor. That's pretty amazing. Period.
Yep.
Like full block, take 0 damage, do 6 damage, set up for like the next turn or 2. It doesn't matter. Like this is insane. And the same, and what we're talking about Impervious here in Act 1 essentially applies to Reaper without strength. It's essentially the same thing, because when you heal this HP back, it's often about the same as full blocking that turn. Very, 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 very close to it, even without strength.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of AoE fights in Act 1. Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Silent.
So green is, man, she's rough. So my opinion on green cards that have gold borders.
Wait, how many again
is
do we have? We have 16, right?
5, 10, 15, 19.
Oh no, it's 19. Wow. Okay.
And she has a lot of rares because her card pool is so dumb. So 1,000 Cuts is pretty
Awful.
bad Act 1. It's pretty bad in general
Adrenaline
terms.
is insane.
And Adrenaline Act 1, insane. After Image Act 1 is like, it's very weird, but like I'm pretty pleased to have it. Alchemize Act 1, like, also kind of weird, but turns out that potions are amazing, so
yeah,
go for it. Bullet Time, terrible Act 1. What are you gonna play? Strike, Defend, and Dagger Throw?
Yeah.
Burst is actually like if you random rare into a burst, go prioritize the upgrade on that over an elite if you have to, because burst is like adding 2 block cards to every hand that you draw burst almost. It's amazing. And if that's the most that it does in Act 1, like that alone is enough. Corpse Explosion, absolutely insane. I don't think we even have to cover this card. It's crazy good.
Nope.
Die. Roughly the same value, being 1 energy as Corpse Explosion and Exhausting.
Yeah.
Doppelganger.
I mean, in the early fights.
Awkward. Yeah, because you go and upgrade this pretty fast too. Doppelganger,
yeah,
super weird. And Venom, like, you just can't build around an idea like in Venom, but it would be better if there was a way to make that happen. It costs 2, and that's too much.
Yep, it's way too much for Act 1. It's just a curse until you upgrade it.
Glass Knife is also maybe like prioritize Campfire over some other thing, other possible options. So go get that upgrade because it goes from 8 twice, which is 16, to 12 twice, which is 24. It's a freaking 8 damage upgrade. It's insane. Grand Finale is essentially unplayable in Act 1. Malaise is something that I can't complain about receiving from random rare, but it's not strictly good in Act 1. You need some other cards in the deck so that you can justify getting a Malaise down, because you have to spend your other energy in Act 1 doing things, and there aren't enough multi-attacks coming at you. Are there any? Until the bosses? No.
No.
No, there are no multi-attacks coming at you in Act 1 besides the bosses. Nightmare. This one is too hard to carry in Act 1. It probably
terrible.
just flat out kills you.
It's a curse.
You can do
Phantasmal
Nightmare
Killer,
Neutralize.
kind of the same thing.
Yeah, Phantasmal Killer, it's almost impossible to make this thing pay off in Act 1. Storm of Steel is, like, not good, but it can... When you draw it on the right turn, it can be fine. But it's like, the right
But
turn
still probably
needs
bad.
to be... Yeah, it needs to be the turn that ends the fight, and you only get to do 16 damage. It's roughly a 16 damage card.
Right,
Tools of the Trade is...
Yeah.
You don't
just need
hate
to push
having
tempo
it.
more in Act 1,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah,
doesn't
you
help
don't hate
do
having it, but this card is 3 turns slow, which makes it really hard to use in Act 1. Unload. Super awkward card.
Great.
The damage is too important. This
Right, the damage is insane.
you cannot say no to this upgrade.
Yeah,
Wraith Form.
Well, even 14 damage, and Wraith Form is like, if you can get it upgraded early, it's like, I guess, fine for Act 1. I mean, the card's so busted that, like, you know, it's probably fine. Especially if you're, you know, fighting Gremlin Knob, it's like almost just free Gremlin Knob. But it's just like, I don't know. So I mean, I think let's just talk let's just go over and just, we have 19 cards. Let's just check off all 19, the good ones. So
the good ones.
One.
I'm gonna put, like, in my opinion, borderline good ones in this list as well. So that's Adrenaline,
Sure.
After Image, Alchemize,
3,
Burst,
4,
Corpse,
5,
Die,
6,
Glass Knife,
7.
Unload, and Wraith Form.
Right. So 9 out of 19 are good to borderline good. Compare that to the Ironclad pool, which is like
8 to 11.
12 out of 16 are good to borderline good. So this option is way worse on Silent.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many, and like a lot of these cards are just curses, like Nightmare, Grand Finale, Phantasmal Killer, Envenom, Storm of Steel, like Thousand Cuts, Bullet Time, like just all curses basically.
Yeah, like super high ceiling cards in a lot of cases, but like just don't do anything throughout the whole of Act 1, including all of the, like, including the elites for the most part, maybe just straight up including the elites, period, and the bosses. Like, in both of those cases, they're just kind of booty. Now, Elmer says he'd be pretty happy starting with Phantasmal every time, and I'd be inclined to agree somewhat, just because, like, doubling your strike damage is actually still pretty good, but the
problem is
there are too many too many draw order problems in Act 1, and it's a skill, which is bad for Knob, and getting it in play for, like, Slime Boss is really hard, and it usually doesn't pay off. And Hexaghost, too many burns. Like, Phantasmal Killer against Guardian means that, like, you have to draw it on exactly the right turn to get value out of it, because you're not allowed to attack it throughout half of that combat. So I do think Phantasmal Killer can be okay, but it needs other support, and probably the upgrade, because if you're taking an option like this, it means that you always have 3 energy through Act 1. So Phantasmal Killer for 2, doing nothing on the turn that you play it, is like, that's a high opportunity cost that you're paying.
Absolutely.
If you get good draws, Elmer, yes, if you get good draws where you're allowed to put it in play, but it just requires the good draws.
All right, let's talk about this real quick.
The reason that Bullet Time is not good is because play the last Striker Defend in your hand doesn't typically provide any value.
Yeah. Let's see.
So it's right off the bat, it's no All for One, no Amplify, no Creative AI, Probably no
Yeah.
fission.
Yeah, you don't have enough
No,
Origin,
no,
Origin,
no machine learning. No meteor strike. Probably
no
no
Thunder Strike,
multicast.
no multicast.
No, yeah, no thunder strike and reboot. You can live with, but I'd
Sure.
rather not have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd rather not have it. But you can live with a reboot. So that is right off the bat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight bad ones out of 17.
Yep. And the rest of them are like decent to good. So Echo Form
Biascog is super conditional.
If you find Orb Gen cards, it's very good.
Yeah, it's super conditional on orb generation. Core
Surge
Surge,
just good.
Core Surge is
just
just a
one
good
mana
strong,
D11.
good strong 1 damage single target attack. You love it.
Yeah.
Echo Form, the fact that it's ethereal,
but it's so good.
the fact that it's ethereal gives it more value.
Absolutely.
Than the other options like Nightmare and Wraithform for Xylent don't go the frick away. You have to play them to get rid of them. Echo Form just goes away. So like when you're not allowed to play it in a fight, like meh, okay, we're out of there. The reason that All for One, it's a 10 damage single target card that brings back other cards that you never put in your deck. That's why it's not good.
I mean, if you have All for One, you might consider putting them in your deck, but yeah.
Yeah, you probably would consider putting them in your deck, but they have to be up against like other pretty terrible options.
True.
Like I don't care how many All for Ones you have. If you're adding Claw to the deck, you're doing the wrong thing. Period.
Okay, let's talk about the really good ones though.
Wrong, so the really good
Electro
ones.
is bonkers. Hyper Beam
so
is
Core Surge, Electro, Hyper Beam.
Hyper Beam's really
and
good
Rainbow
for Act 1.
and Seek.
Rainbow and Seek, strictly good. But that's not really that many, when you consider like multicast is machine learning is like if we go up, just scroll up, we have like just a lot of other kind of options. Yeah, I mean it's like nigh impossible to make Claw work on A20. I mean it's possible, but like okay, Amplify is like very bad. We talked about that. Buffer's fine. It's still like, I mean it's better for Act 1, but it's still like not great. It's fine. So, here we're talking about like a lot of options and a lot of just like really bad ones. Like Creative is just terrible. Meteor Strike is literally unplayable. Just so many bad options and not really like a huge payoff here. So probably wouldn't recommend the random rare on Defect either.
Yeah, I would not recommend it whatsoever. There's like really only, let's see, like All for One means that you have to full commit your build, pretty much.
Yep. Well, and the good options aren't even like that insane. That's the other thing. Like the best one's probably Electro.
Yeah, Electro is by far the best one, but you would not find me complaining about Rainbow at all.
No, not at all.
And Hyper Beam, like while it does kind of trivialize a lot of Act 1 combats,
you're gonna have to roll it later.
It's amazing in Act 1, and then it essentially becomes a curse for the rest of the run in most cases.
It can be okay in Act 2 as well.
It can be, absolutely
and trying to build
fine,
your deck around it is kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, once again, if you're thinking in terms of fun value, not win rate value, then, like, Hyper Beam's awesome. It's so cool. So is All for One.
Oh, yeah.
All for One's so much fun to play with, but, like, is it good at what you do on Ascension 20 heart runs? Kind of no. Like, and almost never in both of those cases. But sometimes just starting a snowball effect by having a Hyper Beam Plus in the deck in Act 1 so that you can go build your deck into other value propositions of important, useful cards.
Seek is just strictly good. I mean, except for in every option except for Knob, but it's just strictly good. It's so good in everything else that you don't really like think about that
Yeah,
too
I
much.
like, and in most knob fights, when I'm at least when I'm not watcher, I play a skill during his enraged turns anyway.
Oh yeah,
So I
oh
don't
yeah. I
really
mean,
I don't
even
mind
sometimes
it too
Watcher likes to do
much.
that.
Hmm.
But yeah, overall, this is very bad
Yeah,
for
random rare
defense.
here is just not all that amazing.
Oh my god, purple cards, yeah.
Purple
Okay.
friggin' cards.
Alpha's really
Yep.
bad.
There's.
Blasphemy is insane.
It's worth it
Um,
probably to click it every time just for a chance at blasphemy, right?
no, 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 no. Because you don't. I mean, obviously you don't need blasphemy. Okay, so Alpha bad, Blasphemy good, Brilliance good, Conjure Blade bad, Deus Ex eh, Daviform bad, Devotion is like, I mean, it's a it's devotion is actually fine because it means that you can start doing divinity stuff. Establishment's bad, judgment is bad, lesson learned is insane, master reality is bad, omniscience is bad because you can't really play it. Ragnarok is okay, Scrawl's insane, Spirit Shield is good, Vault is insane, Wish is probably good.
Yeah, Ragnarok is actually slightly worse than Bludgeon.
Right, right, yeah.
So that
Ragnarok
means that
is
it's still actually pretty good at Act 1, but it's slightly worse than Bludgeon because it's randomly targeted.
well, it's
And
better than
there's a lot
Bludgeon
of times
because
where it's
of
important.
Wrath.
It well in when but that requires a setup turn,
Sure, sure, sure.
and when you have
But like
when
the
you have to take a
possibility
setup
of
turn
it,
into it, sometimes meh.
the possibility of it though is like makes it a little bit better. But yeah, it's still not great, especially when you're guaranteed to have 3 energy. So
All right,
let's just talk
so
about
what are
bad
your
ones.
borderline plus good ones? What was that list?
Borderline good ones are Deus
Borderline
Ex.
plus, borderline plus,
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
borderline to actually good.
right. So Deus Ex, Devotion, um, Ragnarok are like all the borderline to actually good ones.
Okay, and then what are your like definite hits?
Definite hits: Blasphemy, Brilliance, Lesson Learned, Scrawl, Spirit Shield, Vault, and Wish.
So by my count, that is 10 out of 17 cards that you don't say I hate this run about. And
Yeah.
I would put Judgment in there.
Um, Judgment is an Act
Judgment
1
full
card.
kills.
I just
Yeah,
I
it full kills.
hate
It full kills a
Judgment
bunch
so
of
much.
things. I don't
Yeah,
like
'cause
Judgment like in general terms, but like as far as Act 1 snowball effect goes, Judgment can provide that for you.
Sure, sure. It's just like you basically are dedicating a remove to it later because it's a curse in the fights that Watcher has the hardest time with, and that's why Judgment's a
Excuse
terrible
you.
card.
You don't remove Judgment. You kill the heart with Judgment through the damage cap. If you remove Judgment, you're just throwing the run.
God, oh my god.
It saves you. It saves you a whole turn in the heart fight, Merle.
Yes, yes, of course.
It does require some draw order stuff, but in Act 1, almost every
Yeah.
single combat is sub 30 HP.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
Cultist
fine.
and
It's fine.
Jawworm and
It's
Thief
fine.
and Slavers.
It's fine. It's just it's not great. It's fine, it's not great. Also upgrading it's kind of cool. Goes to 40, so
Yeah, the upgrade to
too
40
bad.
actually makes it like quite a bit better.
yeah. But again, like the reason that
And
Judgment
money.
is a bad card is because it does nothing in boss it's a curse in like early turns of boss combats, which are like the most important turns as Watcher.
Yeah, Dewall. I agree with Dewall here. It's better than average
Oh, sure.
as
Like,
a
yes,
4-0
yes,
blessing for sure.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
it's in the same pit as a lot of the other pit cards though. Like which one was in here? All for One.
Yeah.
It's better than not having a blessing.
Yep.
And After Image, for example, like it's better than not having a
Alchemize.
blessing. Alchemize, yeah. And like Berserk and
Corruption.
Brutality and maybe Corruption are kind of on that same tier of like they're positive additions to the deck, but like they're not really helpful enough at Act 1 to
Yep.
want to have. And that applies in a different sense to Judgment because it's actually quite helpful in Act 1, but it quickly becomes kind of a problem to have in the deck.
Yep. Yep. So basically, like the TLDR on all the rares is red rares are really good. Purple rares are okay. Green rares are not super great, and blue rares are terrible.
Pretty much,
and
yeah.
so that also kind of applies to the Choose a Rare, but we'll talk about that a little bit separately, but we'll talk about that more so in the context of the downsides, I think. And now we got to talk about common relics.
And we'll just go through these one by one real fast because a lot of them have obvious value propositions that you could just kind of bang out real quick, like Akabeko.
Good.
It doesn't even need to be a multi-attack on turn 1. If you get like 8 extra damage applied to your first attack of a combat.
If you can Akabeko an AoE card, it's like insane. In an AoE fight. Like Akabeko Cleave is like just really solid. Last night, Burn and I had Akabeko Sweeping Beam. Like we literally took Sweeping Beam just because Akabeko Sweeping Beam like exists.
Yeah, thank you for that follow, new friend. Akabeko's just flat out good as a blessing. As it's good kind of in general terms anyway, but like Floor Zero, Akabeko, love to see it.
Oh yeah.
This also smooths out like every easy pull fight by a long shot too. Like normally like 8 extra damage is like kind of right there in that sweet spot of being exactly the extra boost that you need in your easy pulls. Anchor, fantastic.
Good. Yep.
Yeah.
Great relic.
Just like
T-set's
10
pretty bad.
block turn 1, just take it. Like you just love to see it. T-set is kind of bad. There have been occasions where I have taken like T-set over blue key before, and like on purpose. Like it wasn't just like
I did that once and like hugely regretted it.
I've taken it and played around the idea in my Act 2 and Act 3 with it. Like I have T-set and I know that that helps me path into certain specific things, but like it wants to have like not Lantern most of the time. It wants to have like Bag of Prep. It's better with Silent if you keep your starting relic.
Which you do if we're talking about the context of swapping to a random common.
Yeah, exactly. So like, oops, I crashed my game. We'll be right back with that in a second. Anyway, that can't be mods crashing that, right? My computer's just got to be busted. It's got to be just busted.
I don't know. Uncommon pool.
Yeah, uncommon pool is stacked. It's very stacked.
There's a lot of bad ones though. Like Periapt is really, really bad. That's uncommon.
Yeah, blue candles in there.
Yep. I mean, there's really strong and really bad relics in all the relic pools. You can't say like. I think that I mean I haven't done the actual math, but I think that the like strong to bad density is like relatively similar throughout all of them. But the average power level of like the strong
one day we're just gonna talk about the uncommon and the rare relic pool eventually. We'll actually be covering a little bit of rare relic today.
Back up too.
You're right, I do. Come here, buddy. Back in there. Are we live again?
Yep. All right. So Art of War is really good.
Free Sapphire Key. Yeah, Art of War is insane. There's some like Ironclad and Watcher probably like it the least, like in general terms, but that's not really something to consider. Like once you have an Art of War, you play around the fact that you have an Art of War. If you get it on floor 0, you're very excited by it. If you get it you get it, up against a blue key in the middle of Act 2 and you have a very like attack focused deck, then like okay, maybe Art of War sucks now, but floor 0 Art of War, like you just have to figure out Knob and you're happy to have Art of War after that point.
Bag of Marbles, really nice.
Yeah, it's about the same value, if not better than Akabeko.
Yep, very similar relics. Bag of Prep, just a great relic in general.
Yeah. Now, I'm not overall a fan of draw 2 turn 1 in Act 1, but like it doesn't matter. It's still purely upside, right? Like even if it doesn't do, like it doesn't do anything for most decks on floor 0, but it doesn't matter because it only takes a couple of floors for Bag of Prep to start kind of popping off, and like it does. You don't get extreme value out of it every single combat, but eventually you do start getting a lot of value out of it, especially as you start diluting out your strikes and defense or removing those. It starts getting really good.
It's a really good late game relic, which is why I like it so much, because Watcher just really needs late game help, and like Bag of Prep is just one of the most insane Watcher pickups.
Blood Vial
is okay.
It's fine.
It's not.
It's fine. It's not even. I don't even.
But it's
constant sustain is fine. Like anything that gives you some sustain is fine. It's always an upside. You like to have it, and most of the time, I probably like keeping Blood Vial over taking bites, unless I really need bites as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like taking
the optionality there.
Like bad cards in your deck.
Kind of, yeah. They do kind of justify themselves, but like in general, I think bites are correct more often than we like to take them. But
it's better with silent.
Blood Vial making the option available to you without having to lose your max HP makes it a pretty good pickup. And like 2 HP per combat in Act 1 is also pretty good. Mm-hmm. That's usually just enough to like save you 1 rest, like buy you 1 upgrade. It's pretty okay. Sometimes it's just not enough, and it doesn't matter that you have it, and you never see the bites event in Act 2, and you're like, whatever, I don't care. Anyway, Bronze Scales.
Scales is fine.
Act 1, Act 1, it's not really doing a whole lot, but like we said about Akabeko, 8 damage. Yeah, well, what we said about Akabeko, though, still holds true here for Bronze Scales, that 8 damage is kind of like just enough, and Bronze Scales over 3 turns would be 9 damage. So, in Act 1 mostly. Yeah, mostly in Act 1 you do kind of get attacked every turn, except like Louse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like the slimes and, Jawworm doesn't attack you every turn.
Yeah, most things in Act 1 are pretty hyper-aggressive. That holds true for most of the game, which is what makes Bronze Scales actually kind of insane most of the time. Over the course of a run, especially if you get on floor 0, it usually amounts to like 400, 500 damage. And it can be more.
Yeah.
Centennial Puzzle.
Great. Super good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's like a turn... most of the time, it's like a turn 2 Bag of Prep, unless you get to a point where you stop taking damage. Unless unless you draw poorly, and even in that case, it's usually worthwhile.
Yep, it's still good. It's also like an Act 4 Elite solution, which you need to find, and Puzzle is just a way to do that. Floor 0 is fine.
It's fine.
It's gonna get you like
it's not something that's gonna
gold,
get you
something like that.
Yeah, it's not gonna be exciting over a run, but it's not too hard to add 25, 28 cards to a deck and some strike removes to end up in like a rough like 28 to 32 card deck. So like 170, 180 gold happens there pretty often, but it does take the entire run to pay off in that value, which is meh. But like it just doesn't do enough in Act 1 probably, but you'll live with it. You're not going to be too mad about it, except that it doesn't help you in combats, which is what you're really looking for when you click on a relic in Blessing. Mm-hmm. Damaru, Act 1, I think like it's probably like not that useful. It's really hard to even go 10 turns, even in the boss fights.
It's not going to do anything for you in Act 1, but it's insane because it allows you to just take divinity cards and not feel bad about it at all. And when you can do that, you just win basically because divinity is that strong. Like Damaru is absolutely the best like divinity starter. There's nothing that I'd rather start with as like my first divinity option than that.
Absolutely.
So if you pick that up floor 0, so good. Data Disc, same thing.
I think Data Disc is in the same realm as Damaru. Like you're the best way to start
better
a focus like thing for defect is Data Disc by a long shot.
So good.
Don't have to draw it, don't have to play it, doesn't cost you energy, doesn't slow you down. Like you walk into combat stronger than you were before by default. It doesn't even require extra card picks. Like Damaru kind of insists on some card picks. Data Disc does not. It's just like, here's value, take it.
Thanks, Loud. Dreamcatcher's fine. Card
It
rewards
is.
are good. Resting
Mhm.
is actually like something that you need to do with non-watcher classes. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's not great, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not something that you're super excited about, to be sure. So if we're talking about like things that you're actually really excited about, Dreamcatcher's not one of them. Happy
Right,
Flower
but
absolutely is.
yeah, Happy Flower, insane. It's really hard to get the deck good and rolling so that you can set up Happy Flower at the end of every combat. But also in Act
Even if you
One,
can, still good.
that doesn't matter so much. Like you don't really require setting it up in Act One. It's kind of okay anyway.
Yeah.
Whenever you get that energy, it kind of pays off in Act One. Later in the run, you need to start setting it up on purpose because you need to pay it off, with an intention. But in Act One, just Happy Flower whenever Happy Flower does Happy Flower.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're happy about
a
Happy
third
Flower.
of an energy relic, with no downside. Lantern is a pretty solid relic, especially for silent. Um, it's just like more energy turn one is like really solid. um,
Maulbank,
turn one,
yeah.
turn one's
Lantern, yeah,
really
turn one energy is great. Silent loves it the most for sure. Combines well with with Bag of Preparation, and
It's also really good with ice cream
Mm-hmm.
because it means
Yeah,
the
ice
energy
cream
never gets
loves it.
wasted.
Maulbank's fine.
Yeah. You can delay
like
that
your
first
first.
shop even to like Act 2
I
sometime.
frequently find myself going through Act One with no shops. Just because the paths are so much better other ways, and even when I don't even when I don't save up until Act Two, sometimes or most of the time, I'm looking for a shop somewhere past the midway point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and then you
like
just
it
get hella
usually,
value out of that.
yeah, it
You
usually
get like
means
200 plus gold.
yeah, by the time you use Maulbank in Act One, it usually means that you've already gathered up like an extra 100 gold, if not more.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
pretty great.
Which,
It's kind of awesome. This is
not too bad.
kind of like getting a delayed payoff on the 100 gold blessing, but
yeah,
it also takes a relic out of the
potential.
pool.
Right, takes a relic out of the pool, and it also has potential to be better. If you don't need the shop, then you could get 200 gold out of it, which is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Meal ticket's great. Just super super good. Means that you can take Coffee Dripper and not feel bad about it. Just a super good relic.
Yeah, and in Act One, you almost always are visiting a shop. Like I try to delay it as much
Yep.
as possible, but like it gives you a lot more optionality too. It usually
It's probably
buys you
gonna
at
get you
least one,
like
if
a
not two
couple
upgrades.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's worthwhile,
Yep.
100%. Pretty happy to see meal ticket. Any kind of sustain kind of falls in the same pattern,
Yep.
except Regal
Nunchaku
Pillow
is
because it
just like
costs you an upgrade for a rest. But like the 15 HP is 15 HP.
Yep. Nunchaku's pretty good.
It's
Just does
probably the
stuff.
worst like energy provider.
Early for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really
You can do
not a
setup things with
problem.
it. And
Yeah,
yeah, the Rock is just really good. I'm a big fan of the Rock.
yeah. Dexterity
In
is
general.
amazing. Period.
Oh yeah, Dex
It's
is
not really
stupid.
like you're happy to see that. Omamori is like actually fine if
Yeah.
you like to favor events a lot.
Mhm.
If you're like me and Merle a lot of the time, you're trying to avoid events anyway. But
Yeah.
like with Omamori in your back pocket, that kind of changes things. And you might actually favor events more. When I have Omamori as a starting relic, I think I would favor events actually a little higher than I typically do. So
I mean,
and
Omamori is just 999
get
gold.
some value.
It's literally just 999 gold.
Yeah,
So
but
I
it takes 35 floors to pay off. So
mean, shh, we don't talk about that. We just talk about the fact that it's 999. I mean, but honestly,
and look,
like
in Act One, this thing is worth 150 plus 275 gold in a lot of Act Ones, though too.
yeah, no, it's just like actively good because it makes events way better. And
Yep.
like you're gonna have to go through events at some point. So it's not crazy, but it's just solid. Orichalcum's a really good Act 1 relic, such a good Act 1 relic. It falls off super hard
it's
in the
pretty
late
supreme.
game, but it's so good in Act 1 that it's like worth it. Pendib's great. It's
Yeah.
kind of in that same like Akabeko Bag of Marbles territory where it's just like gonna do something for you in basically every combat, and that's pretty cool. You can also do like meta scaling setup stuff with it to make it better. Potion Belt's bad for Act 1, but it's really good for the late game.
Yeah,
You're kind
most
of
of the
happy to
time in
have
Act
it.
1, you're using your potions.
Yep.
Most of the time, you're using your potions in Act 1, so you don't get to fill the potion belt up. But, like, if you get strong enough that even when you're using your Act 1 potions up, if you get strong enough in Act 1 that you get to start storing up potions later in the run, you're pretty happy that you have a potion belt in your back pocket.
Yeah.
And there's actually going to
Orichalcum,
be something else that we have to address in the near, like after we go through all the relics. There's one more thing that we definitely have to address as well. But yeah, potion belt is pretty fine. Orichalcum, pretty fine. For Act 1. Potion belt not for Act 1, but still pretty fine. Pin-nib, it is in the Akabeko and marbles area. Insect is ridiculous.
Oh my god, so good. So good.
It's so good. It pays
I
off
love
on
small
every
mobs
act.
so much. Oh my
But
god, yeah.
like in Act 1 alone, this thing is worth like almost 30 damage per elite.
Yeah. Crazy
Like,
good.
It's so good. 25% less HP. It's like 15 to 30 HP per elite fight.
Yep. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. Red Skull is really solid.
Yeah,
Love
it
that-
is because
love
you
that relic.
like this. Like, first of all, if you're taking random common relic, again, it means you have Burning Blood still. So this is Ironclad only. So you always have Burning Blood and Red Skull in that case. And when you go low on HP as Ironclad, like, you're not that scared anyway. And this just helps you like get more value out of the class as a whole. It's really good.
Oh yeah. Especially if you're like in a Hexaghost act as well.
Yeah.
Pillow's good. It's good because it often saves you a rest in an act. Like Pillow's a great relic if you're struggling. And relics that are good when you're struggling are just good relics because if it's bad, it means that you're not struggling, right?
Yeah, now normally Pillow kind of pays off later in the run by giving you a better like way to path through later acts.
Right.
But it typically, if you're resting, the extra 15 HP is high value, but also like in Act 1, it's a little less value because like Act 1, once you get to like the second campsite or in an act, most of the time you have trivialized the rest of the act except for the very hard pull fights.
Yep.
Like the cultist and a friend, the Jawarm and a friend.
Yep. No, Pillow's great. Pillow's great. I mean, if like I said, if it does nothing, then you don't care.
I think the value of Pillow is usually +1 elite over +1 upgrade. I think it sacrifices an upgrade to path more aggressively into elites.
Right, which is good. I mean, more elites is good. Smiling Mask is fine. It's definitely not a high roll. It's pretty like mediocre in terms of, I mean, it's Smiling Mask. Like, what are you gonna talk about there?
Yeah, I mean, 50 gold removals
probably
is fantastic, but like you're also usually not pathing into enough shops to even remove all of your strikes. You need to get some advantages out of events to get all your strikes out of the deck most of the time. So, like Smiling Mask is fine. It saves you a ton of gold, but it's not a combat relic in Act 1, and it's not a sustained relic in Act 1, which makes it kind of meh overall.
Yep, agreed. Snecko Skull's just really good for like the entirety of the game, but the problem is it doesn't necessarily do a ton for you in Act 1 because you don't start with any poison cards. So
but like all it takes is one poison card and a Snecko Skull to start rolling.
Sure. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I'm just saying like it does have the potential to whiff. Strawberry is just bad.
Yeah, this
We
is
talked
this is
about why
pretty
max HP
pretty
is
pretty
bad.
bogus.
Boot is terrible. Just it's yeah.
I would
Unless
be
you have like
honestly, I would be
Tantrum.
sad about getting a boot from Niao. Honestly, boot and Juzu bracelet especially. I'd be sad about
I'm sorry,
getting
what?
them from
You just cut out there for a second.
yeah, just some, I don't know, some weird, some like there you know what I'm saying. Anyway, the boot
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
actually sad to get from Niao as a blessing, because even though like
Oh,
we
for
have all
sure.
the memes around the boot and we love it to death, taking the boot from Niao means that it can never be in your freaking chest. You can never get your blue key there for boot, and that actually frustrates the living life out of me.
Oh my god.
Tiny chest is tiny. Look, tiny chest is memes too, but tiny chest
Oh
pays
yeah.
off when when uh when most of these other relics that are memes or bad don't pay off. And like this is
Right.
actually a fine relic to have. It
The
usually means +1 relic in Act 1, which is just like trading tiny chest for a different relic. It
right.
gets tiny chest out of the pool, and it actually lets you get kind of like +2 relics over the course of a run, because it's not that
It's usually.
uncommon
I mean,
for you to
if you
end
path
up
for
in
it,
3 to
like
4 to 5 events
yeah.
in an act.
It's like +3 relics if you path for it. The problem with Tiny Chest is that Curse Key exists, and Curse Key is something that you absolutely want to take almost every time that you see it, because it's really, really, really strong. And obviously, Tiny Chest is like actively very bad with Curse Key. So I've actually
Oh,
skipped on Tiny Chest, like not just like after an elite. I've skipped on Tiny Chest.
yeah. We forgot to provide context to what makes boot valuable, is that it
Oh
turns
yeah.
Tantrum into a good card.
Yeah, Tantrum bad card without it. Now riddled with holes though, a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm mostly
and
mad
let's go
about things in
pummel.
general with boot. I don't really
Sword
care.
boomerang. But yeah, it's not great. Ornithopter is a great relic. It's
Yep.
just super, super,
Sustain
super
in
good.
Act 1. Anything that
Yep.
says sustain in
Same.
Act 1.
Sustain's good.
Strawberry, we didn't mention, is better than the max HP blessing because it takes Strawberry out of the relic pool. It advances you 1 relic in the common list.
Right.
So it's better. It's technically better than max HP, but you're still super disappointed
not
to get
great.
it. Anything that is sustain in Act 1 is amazing. You love it.
Vajra is very good.
Yeah, Vajra's
I mean, it's
amazing.
just strength. It's just
Strength,
just
yeah,
good.
strength to strength, adding one to every damage card in the game, and a non-conditional +1 damage to
Yep.
everything in the
Yep.
game is
Super strong.
fantastic.
Swapping into
Warpaint,
Warpaint.
It's like
It's
it
fine.
hits Survivor, Vigilance, Zap, or
Hits
Dual
two defense,
Cast.
and you're not actually that sad,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, if it hits Survivor, Dual Cast, Zap, and Vigilance, those are all like pretty nice hits. But if you just hit
Yeah.
2 defends with it, like, I mean, it ain't. You can't complain. You can't
Yeah,
complain because
no,
two
you're not
two
even
defend
that- you're
pluses
not
in
even
Act
that
1
bad.
is actually pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how often
agree.
does Silent get to full block for 2 energy because she has Survivor, right? Like, she blocks
Yep.
for 8 plus 5. The rest of them don't. Watcher does. Watcher blocks for 8 plus 5 also pretty easily, and that's a
Yep.
full block on a lot of situations.
Yep. And Watcher actually does it for 1 energy, which is crazy. Because Vigilance is technically 0 cost.
Yeah, Vigilance does pay you back. And Whetstone,
Same thing.
yeah, it's fine. I'm less excited about upgrading strikes over Warpaint upgrading defends, but in Act
Sure.
1, upgraded strikes like +3 damage is
Hey.
+3 damage, +6 damage
+3
in
damage.
per combat is +6 damage.
Yep.
And again, what did we say about Akabeko and Bronze Scales is that 6 to 9 damage is kind of a sweet spot for a lot of your combats.
It's a very nice spot to be in, 6 to 9 damage, I agree.
So that gives us hits on Akabeko, Anchor,
2,
Art of War,
3,
Bag of Marbles, Bag of Prep.
5. Yeah.
I would put
That's not
Borderline on
considered-
Blood
let's-
Vial.
Let's, yeah. 5.
I'm gonna go
yeah.
borderline and better. Bronze
Okay,
Scales.
so why don't we just count it as like half? So like scales plus vials, like let's just
So
like
this so like
one.
this is like one together,
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah. So
Centennial
six,
Puzzle.
7. That can be
I,
half.
yeah, I'll give a half point there. Whole point to
8,
Damaru, whole point to Data Disk,
9.
half point to Dreamcatcher, whole point
Yep,
to Happy Flower, whole point to Lantern, whole point to
yep,
Mallbank, whole point to Meal Ticket, half a point
yep.
to Nunchaku,
Sure.
whole point to Smooth Stone. I'm
We'll
kind
go
of
half
torn on
on Omamori.
Omamori. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on Omamori, so I'm gonna say half.
Yeah,
Whole point to Orichalcum, whole point to Pin Nib. I'm also
let's go
torn
half on
on
that
Potion
one.
Belt, so half on that.
2 points
Preserved
to Preserved
Insect.
Insect.
Yeah, this is probably 2 points here. Red Skull. Red Skull is honestly almost 2 points too, but let's just say one because
Yeah,
it's like this and Snecko Skull both for one because they're class specific.
yep.
Like we did for the other class specific ones up here. Regal Pillow, I give it a point. Smiling Mask, half a point. Strawberry, no.
Yep.
The boot, no. Tiny Chest, half a point. Ornithopter, point. Vajra, point. Warpaint and Whetstone, also a point.
Right. So
So
this is the thing. Like most of these are good, but the qualifier that we have
yeah,
to make
in a
here,
vacuum. In a vacuum.
in a vacuum, most of these are good. The problem is that the benefit that they provide you with is not like it's impactful, but it's not like overwhelmingly impactful. The point system is just whether or not we think they're good. Like basically,
Yeah, it's just like roughly
roughly how good we think they are.
yeah,
And
roughly how good like they are in general terms for Act 1.
yep, yep,
If it's like pretty much pure upside or high value, it gets a point. If it's kind of borderline good, but like you're not super upset about it, you're kind of disappointed, it's about worth half a point. And the
yep.
rest of them are like kind of like not even getting a blessing.
Right, right, right. So yeah, I mean, this is not bad. Like it's better than the bad ones in terms of blessings. Random
It's
common
bet
is better than the bad ones.
it's probably better than choose a card. It's better than transform. It's better than max HP, right? Like
It's better than lament,
it's
probably.
probably better than random rare. It's better than lament.
Yep. It's just like more consistently really strong. All right, let's keep going here, I guess, with like back to the thing.
Absolutely. And pop this right back up. So yeah, that one took a long time because that's a lot of things that really need to be evaluated like individually.
Mm-hmm.
But like the random common relic pool as a whole, upside. Like
Oh yeah.
you probably click that. If you're afraid of the other options on that screen, random common relic that's a thumbs up for me. Seems good, man. So
Yep.
there's another blessing that is remove one card. I think remove one card is supposed to be defend most of the time.
Yep.
Because like mostly probably because front loaded damage is just like too important getting started in Act 1.
Common relic start over
Yeah,
rare relic
construction.
start.
We're definitely going to
Yeah.
cover Rare Relic Start and probably compare the two when we get there.
Yep.
Remove one. Defect. Okay, so Defect probably always removes one strike because we're pretty sure, I think, and it might even be like two, like for the other blessings. We're not there yet, but for the other blessings that allow you to remove two cards or you get an empty cage boss swap, I think remove two strikes might make Defect's damage density better. That doesn't mean everything that you want it to mean, but I think remove one strike is always the correct answer for Defect, and I wish it was always the correct thing for Silent, but I think remove one defend in general
It's probably
terms is
better,
probably
yeah.
better.
Yeah, I just think that
So
remove one's like really not that exciting in terms of the impact that it ends up having like especially early on is like quite low. yes, it does get way better later, but it's still just like, again, when you're comparing it to the high impact stuff that can be on this screen, it's not there.
Yeah, it's just not high enough impact for you to consider most of the time over your other blessings.
Yep.
So like it kind of just falls in the same boat as most of the other blessings. Like it's just like there's something probably
There's a
better
common theme
all
here.
the time. Yeah.
There's a very
And
common theme here.
yeah, there's a common theme here that applies to almost every blessing that you can ever see. And upgrade one.
Upgrade one, eruption,
Upgrade one,
bash,
eruption
neutralize.
bash. Eruption bash.
Yep. It's pretty much
That's
neutralized.
it. That's it. No, eruption bash.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Not like I'm not trying to be dismissive or anything,
No,
but
sure.
like I've
agree,
I've looked at this so many times, and I've thought about this so many times, and I honestly I don't think that neutralize being too weak provides value, and it probably doesn't, but sometimes it might discourage you from grabbing other sources of weak, like even a sucker punch. Like sometimes the first card reward screen has a sucker punch on it, and it's correct, neutralize plus or not. Like it doesn't matter. So it comes like an extra source of weak is more important than upgrading neutralize. And with an upgraded neutralize, you still want extra sources of weak. You need to disperse those throughout your deck.
Yep.
So the upgrade on neutralize, I think this is roughly a wasted blessing for Silent. Survivor, Dane tried to pass that around for a while, and it's such a fun idea. And 11 block for 1 energy is also pretty good. 2 energy for 12 block on Vigilance is like kind of sick, right?
Well, but Vigilance costs 0.
But Vigilance, Vigilance pays you back, and Survivor does not. But like most of the time in Act 1, when you see Survivor, you play Survivor. You always play Neutralize when you see it. But 11 this turn is better than like 2 this turn and maybe 2 next turn, right? So I don't think that you upgrade either of them. Honestly, if you're upgrading a card here for Silent, it's probably better to upgrade Strike. Sadly, probably.
That's very sad. So yeah,
upgrade
one.
Zap and Dual Cast, I think, are also like energy upgrades that for 1 cost cards I think are wrong in Act 1 for the most part. It's not a hard and fast 100% rule, but I think energy upgrades in Act 1 are probably most of the time incorrect. If you're upgrading a 1 cost card to 0 cost, that card probably needs to be called Terror. Otherwise you're not getting that much value out of it, and it means that you didn't find other useful cards to upgrade.
Yep.
And that's why I'm not 0 cost Zap Gang. Burn's probably not here right now, but that's why I'm not 0 cost Zap Gang, because there's almost always a better upgrade in the deck. The only one that really, like, Watcher and Ironclad have Eruption and Bash, and those are actually really good Act 1 upgrades.
Absolutely. Yep, and Snecko Eye exists as well. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 100 gold. Super solid one here. I think that of all the ones that are here, like 100 gold is probably one of the best, just because it's so versatile. And if your pathing wants you to take an early shop, like this can make that shop so much more impactful. And like a really good early shop is almost as good as any blessing, including even the boss swap sometimes.
Sometimes it's high variance because shops are not always good, and early shops are not always great, but shops do offer you shops do offer you 5 cards in your color plus 2 plus a rare colorless and an uncommon colorless, card remove, 3 relics, which at least one of them at least will be too expensive because it will be uncommon or rare, probably not guaranteed, but probably, and potions. So 100 gold is actually like really, really, really good. It allows you to buy a rare card at your discretion, not random rare. it allows you to, and you also get to like justify how, well, what thing makes the most value for you with 100 gold in a shop. 199 gold usually means about 210 gold after floor 1. 210
Hmm.
gold buys a common relic, it buys 3 potions, it buys a rare card, it buys a shop relic,
Yep.
it
Or
buy
just a
usually buys
combination of these stuff.
your rare colorless like Hand of Greed, or even just dive in and say I'm gonna carry an Apotheosis until it's really good. Um, like Flash of Steel is sometimes a fine justifiable purchase in Act 1 early on, and it
Right.
also, like, usually you get to balance this on top of removing a strike as well. Like, you can't get a relic and a strike remove, but you can get like 2 potions and a strike remove, or whatever.
Yep. 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 And again, like you can still do, like rare an uncommon card on sale and like a couple common cards and a strike remove or something like that, sometimes. Something
Yes, you
to
can
that effect.
you can also see Ori here.
Yep. Yep. There's just so much upside here. And if your path is taking you through an early shop, like it's very you have to consider it a lot.
Yeah, it's like
Especially
it's
if
like
you're if you're
the
someone.
path needs to be an early shop, and it needs to be along a path that you think is like debatable in terms of potential strength. And hi Fang, it needs to be
Yeah.
debatable in terms of potential strength versus a different path that doesn't have an early shop in it. And
Yep.
sometimes you're allowed to actually carry this 100 gold to a later shop. So like don't discount that the potential value of having the 100 gold boost, on floor 12. It's like Maulbank.
Yep. All right.
But like that's
Three,
really all there
three
is to
posts.
say about it, though. It's
It's
probably
just
very
solid.
good, but like
Yep.
sometimes it's kind of not. Thank you so much, Fang, for gifting out a gift sub. Congratulations to Draco. Congratulations for joining the club there. Sorry, Merle, didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, that's a gift sub. Throw that out there,
No.
guys.
Absolutely.
Once again, I'm here with Merle, and if you guys don't know about Merle, please, while you're here and we're having this chat, pop over to the side during something that you don't think is interesting. Open him up in a tab. Go drop him a follow as well, please.
Um. Thank you for that. We have. Oh yeah, Draco. Always awesome to see gift subs going to people that like are active in chat and we know. Um. So yeah, 3 potions is not one that we need to spend a super long time taking into consideration for a couple reasons. Like the rare card percent impact secret is kind of funny. So if you guys don't know, essentially, like the potion screen also kind of counts as a card reward screen. In that it impacts your rare card percentage. So that's like a thing that you have to consider. Um, the potions are going to help you in the early combats most likely, but they could also just potentially have you losing out on value because you didn't need to use a potion and then you get potions from your first couple combats. Like it's not super uncommon that you'll get 2 potions for the first 3 combats and you won't have to use one. And then this has like very, very little impact. Um, so it's just one of those ones where there's basically almost always something better on the screen.
Yeah, my
Um,
my notes on it are pretty much the same. It's like it's roughly about the value of a lament snipe, because potions are you have to use them in your early combats to save the extra
yep,
HP that they save. If you don't use them,
yep,
if you hoard them, then like you most of the time across 3 combats you can at least trade off 1 potion.
yep,
So always, always, always look at the combat that you're fighting and think, is there, like, you don't get the most value out of a potion that you can in most other fights. Like I say that in hallway combats they're roughly worth about 10 HP, and in elite
mhm,
fights they can be worth like an easy 20-30 HP, right? Because you can
yep,
go, like, you can
yep,
end an extra turn early with a potion that you can't do without the potion. But like
yep,
if it's saving you like in the first 3 combats like 5 HP, with the likelihood that you trade this potion out across those 3 combats, please
yep,
absolutely use that potion, trade it up for something different, grab that thing, and
yep,
make it useful. But like the extra value of the rare percent, and the way that 3 potions does not quite incentivize you so much as Lament to combat dodge, makes it a little bit better, I think, than Nial's Lament, but it's just still not that good unless you're
Yep.
really, really like not so frugal with using your potions. And then like sometimes you burn your potions on things and you get paid back with like a dex pot or a speed pot or something that doesn't do anything in Act 1 a lot of the time.
Yep.
And that sucks. But still, if you're taking this option, make sure that you're getting value out of it by using your potions. And then you can honestly say it's fine.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now we'll get into the interesting part, the most interesting part of the discussion, I think. At least of,
All right,
of today's discussion.
Let's
Which is
let's
the
do this. Let's do
but
this
go
in
ahead.
terms of like first of all, these downsides are that you can lose max HP. It's Ironclad 8 max HP, Silent 6, Defect and Watcher 7 max HP. You can take damage. Ironclad 18, Silent 15, Defect 18, Watcher 21, which I don't quite understand.
Yeah, it's
Like
kind of
she
weird.
doesn't have that much more HP than Ironclad
doesn't.
and Defect, right? She has
She has
the same,
less
like
HP
roughly the
than-
same or less.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Curse.
Yeah, it's weird.
Curse is going to get kind of some special discussion. And lose gold. 99 gold to pay for almost any of this stuff is like pretty good. So those are the possible downsides that you can see, and they come up against the upside of remove 2, which is essentially the value of +2 draw throughout the deck and all your cycles.
It's
That's
Empty
essentially
Cage.
what Bag of
Empty
Prep
Cage,
does.
You get to keep your starter relic.
Yeah, Empty Cage, keeping your starting relic. It kind of like provides the value of what a Bag of Prep does by improving your draw over the course of the run by 2 cards, which is essentially what Bag of Prep does. Transform 2 can almost never be 2 strikes, but again, like remove and transform. I think remove 2 for Defect is actually like go ahead, remove 2 strikes. Everybody else, it's probably strike defend. But I actually have no problem with remove 2 defend on everybody except Defect as well. Just because it's not always easy. Like Silent is very good at replacing defends with other block cards, but she's just not allowed to remove 2 strikes. Nobody is really except Defect, because pretty sure that it increases the density of damage in a Defect deck by keeping Cracked Core and allowing you to cycle Zap Dual Cast a lot more often. You get them so fast that way. Transform 2 it's like, I don't know. Hey, Lazy Potato. Merle, give me a Lazy Potato.
Wait, what? Hello?
Look at the name in chat. Lazy Potato. It's got an AO at the end instead of just an O.
Oh, AO? Oh, like
yeah,
AO.
Lazy Potato.
Yeah, got you.
All right. Well, what's up, Lazy? Thank you for the bits. Happy to see you. Hope you're having a good day too. So transform is like probably better than remove.
Yeah.
Probably in like kind of universally, transform 2 is better than remove, but for
it's just there's so much variance in it though. That's the problem. Like
the variance is really high.
Yeah.
But like it's not. Fang Shrek, I've tried to Fang Shrek. That's the best I ever did for you, man. Gain 250 gold. It's kind of in the same boat as 100 gold.
You can't lose all your gold to gain 250, right? Like that's never
right. Yeah, you
back.
can't. You always. This one never comes up against lose 99 gold.
Yeah. But yeah, like okay, so. Gain 250 gold is really strong. For exactly the same reason that gain 100 gold is really strong.
But
it's like
this one
100 gold on steroids.
It's pretty much is. I think for lose max HP. Max HP, the 250 gold is like almost a shoe-in. The take damage one is like. That one's very maybe, but probably still
then it's
better.
also character dependent.
It is. But like this one, most of the same things apply as what we said about 100 gold for no downside. It's roughly the
Yep.
same thing.
Yep. Choose a rare is we just talked about all the rare cards. So you know, choose a rare is a lot better than random rare because we're talking about like Ironclad, especially. This is really, really, really good, right? Because Ironclad has like 12 of 16 rare cards that are just like insanely strong, or not insanely strong, but like that are just you know like either borderline to insane. So the probability that you completely whiff on this as Ironclad is very low. Watcher is also pretty good for this, just because like she has a lot of good ones as well. And also, if you get a bad one, it's not the end of the world because her Act One's pretty strong anyway. But Silent and Defect still probably don't really like to take this, just because the probability that you whiff is high enough that it's like not necessarily worth it.
Yeah, I think you might justify gambling on this for Silent because there are like essentially almost 50% are like passable or good hits. And
Mm-hmm.
like the good ones for Silent are really, really good for Silent in Act
Yep.
One. The
Yep.
and the meh ones are like they're still good and they give you something to direct your deck towards. So like they're kind of okay anyway. But for defect, the rares there's like three, maybe four
Yeah.
that you
Yeah. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really want to see, and the rest of
It's
them are
basically
like,
Electro.
yeah, yeah. Basically, it's just Electro. Really, it honestly is.
Yep.
So choose a rare. The fact that it lets you look at three cards to pick between makes it much better than random rare, but not by a whole lot. Not by a whole lot.
Yep.
I think it's. I think.
Yep.
I think it. Like once again, it has to come up against. It probably needs to be for gold.
Yeah.
For 99 gold.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't take it for max HP or damage. Choose a rare colorless card. I think the hits there are
Can we just take a look at those real
kind of-
quick? Because I just see what the misses are.
Yeah, let's look
Secret
at the
Technique is
choose a
insane,
rare.
by the way. Like, the more that I've played with Secret Technique, like, that card's actually just, like, super, super, super busted.
Yeah, I
okay,
really like a lot of the colorless rares, but like for Act 1 starting with, they're a little bit meh in general terms.
Okay, so Apotheosis is obviously very good, because if you build your whole strategy around it, it's great. It allows you to take more aggressive paths and like rest more, which is cool, because you don't necessarily value upgrades as much. It also makes Fusion Hammer free, which is like really nice. Chrysalis is horrible. It's just like really, really, really terrible card. You don't want to like 2 energy do nothing is very, very bad. Also, dying to Knob is not really that cool. And random stuff could just be garbage. So
it can be most of the time when you play Chrysalis, you're pretty excited to see the results, unless you're silent, because like you need like it needs to be like exactly leg sweep and
yeah.
deadly poison, bouncing flask, like acrobatics. Like it needs to be very specific cards. Apotheosis is kind of generally overvalued for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm saying is
shuffling.
that like having your entire deck up, like don't think about Apotheosis as a power card. It's not a skill. It's a power card, and the power is upgrade all the cards in your deck. Like if there, you know, because and Apotheosis always gets upgraded, right? So if there was a power card that said one energy, upgrade all cards in your deck, you would take that like 1,000%, 1,000% of the time that you would take that card, right? And that's what Apo is
pretty much.
So
but
it's
like it's still a card that you kind of have to carry, and but like if you're building around the idea of having an Apotheosis in the deck and you just find your way to like get value out of that, just force value out of that, like force
Yep.
more combats, take more elites, and just rest your way through it. Like you can get tons and tons and tons of value out of Apotheosis. But the problem with Apotheosis as a starter card is that it typically, if you get a couple of good draw orders to start with and you get a couple of good card reward screens to start with, the snowball effect allows you to just upgrade those cards anyway. So you end
Right,
up like
but
you get diminishing returns on Apotheosis over the course of a lot of runs because it is actually so strong to have a fully upgraded deck.
sure, sure, but it's still. I mean, if you're getting diminishing returns on a card that's really good, then you're winning anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that's probably why people value Apotheosis so highly because like the fact that it can provide diminishing returns as you go
It's unreliable
is
to
like
draw,
really
sure.
good.
Well, upgrading weak cards makes them not weak cards. Like I love strike and defend upgrades when they're for free. Like from the event in
Was it
Act Two that upgrades strikes and
ancient
defends.
writing or something? Yeah,
Yeah,
the
and like when
simplicity and elegance.
lesson learned hits strikes and defends, you're not even that upset about it. Um,
Yeah, not really. At least not until later on when you have some targets that you're really looking for.
yeah, Apotheosis is better than fasting early, and has potential to be like just as good as fasting later with no downside. And fasting's a good card, so Apo's like an
Yeah,
insane
pretty
card.
much. Like
Um,
Apo pretty much does what fasting does in general terms. It exhausts,
yep,
but it doesn't have the downside of like costing you energy or needing
and it
artifact
costs one less
or
when you
pellets
upgrade it.
cleansing, and you can upgrade it for less energy. And um, the not having the downside of fasting makes the one energy probably a better upgrade than the fasting upgrade for +1/+1.
Yep, yep, yep.
Chrysalis, you're right. It just like it's so bad to have it against a knob fight,
Mm-hmm.
and it's honestly not that good in sentries. It's absolutely fine in Lagavulin, but like it's not that
Oh
good
yeah,
in sentries because you need something that does damage most of the time, and it's absolutely terrible in knob. So
right.
you kind of just like starting with this is not that good, and it takes a long time to like really get it rolling too because it doesn't
And it
upgrade to
also
one
just doesn't
energy.
have built-in synergy with your deck as well,
Yeah.
which is another thing.
Uh,
Okay, Hand of Greed, obviously very good to get here.
hmm So yeah, Hand of Greed
Magnetism,
flat out just good. It does so much damage. You love this card. You probably click it every time you see it. Maybe even over Apotheosis.
potentially.
The long term value of 20 to 25 damage every time you draw this, the front loaded damage in
Yep.
Act 1, and the gold value of a Fatal with it is probably on par, if not better, than just upgrading your cards because of the value of gold in this game.
Oh yeah.
Magnetism's a cool card. It's not good in Act 1. It's not good to
Yeah.
have. It requires an upgrade just to make it playable because again, if you're getting this card, it means that you're not getting a boss swap into an energy upgrade. You really
Yep.
have to have this.
Yep. It's not good. It's not worth the downsides, basically. Master
Yeah, but
strategy. Can we
random
just pop out of
colorless
here?
cards are pretty cool.
I think we can pop through these maybe a little bit faster if we just go.
Yeah, Master strategy, sick. It's insane. Even with
Yeah,
Knob in
yep.
mind. Thank you for
Super
that
good.
follow, new friend. Mayhem, same kind of problem as magnetism, but it is an energy cheat, which makes it a little bit better. I would prefer this over
Okay.
magnetism probably every time, but yeah, there are downsides and it probably steals an upgrade slot, so I'm not a big fan of it. Metamorphosis is better than Chrysalis probably for Act 1.
Yeah, but still bad because again, it's just like shuffling cards into your deck that are not like necessarily cards that synergize with your deck. Panache
Yeah,
is
I know, and
bad.
that's why we're going over this right now, as this blessing, because there are reasons to take it. Panache is bad indeed, because first of all, Panache doesn't count for its own for itself in the 5 cards in a single turn, which is
Yeah.
kind of bogus. But like later in the
Yeah.
game, once you start cycling the deck and doing a bunch of like hard play stuff without Velvet Choker, Panache gets like pretty great, but Act 1,
You
it's
fly into
almost
it.
impossible to play 5 cards.
Yeah, yeah. It's just not good. It's just a very inconsistent card. It's not worth
Sadistic
taking out.
Nature. Sadistic Nature is in the same boat as Panache. Zero cost, really easy to play and get down, but like getting value out of it is really really hard in Act One.
Yep, agreed.
Secret Technique, I do think is kind of insane
So
in
good.
general terms, but in
So
Act One, like I'm kind of on the fence.
I mean, there's no reason not to take it, except for
It
Knob.
depends on what it's
Knob,
up against, right?
sure. But it's good enough to where you would take it even though Knob is a thing, and the upgrade on it is just ridiculous. It's basically like Seek that you can play multiple times to combat.
Yeah, the upgrade, not exhaust. It's very, very nice for that.
Especially when you're like playing Watcher and you really, really want Scrawl and you really, really want Vault. Like,
Yeah, and I think Secret Technique is better in
it's
general
way
terms
better.
than Secret Weapon, like by quite a long shot. But in Act One, I might prefer Secret Weapon in Act
Potentially.
One.
Potentially, yeah.
So that's really all there is to say about those cards. The Bomb, Act One. Man, it's
Decent.
hard to justify having this card and playing it for 2, but because it takes 3 turns to pay off, which is 2 turns
Yep.
after you play it. Because the turn that you play it actually counts for it. Why does Panache not count for itself, but the Bomb counts from the turn you play it? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
What's bad about Sadistic Nature, Sherwins, is that it's really hard to get value out of this in Act One. That's all that's all this is about. As a Niao Blessing, ending up with Sadistic Nature in your deck is like not that good.
No.
Who do
Yeah.
we worship
and
more, Cultist, the Bomb, or the Boot?
card in the
The
late
Boot for
game.
sure.
It's just such a bad card in the late game that like you
The
almost
Bomb
can't
is
take
pretty
it
bad.
for that. Thinking Ahead is like strictly good. It's not strictly. I mean, it's just like fine. You know, it's Warcry basically.
Warcry, basically, yeah. And oops, what happened there?
Mhm.
And the upgrade on it, I think, is not required. It just makes it not exhaust, and I'm not that like psyched about. Like I just really want this for my first cycle if I have it in the deck, and then after that,
Yep.
I'm probably fine moving forward.
Yep.
So that one like doesn't introduce upgrade debt, which is something that you can say for it. It's also card draw, and it's kind of draw fixing as well. Transmutation is like magnetism this turn,
Hmm.
which is kind of good, but you have to dedicate all of your energy to it, which is actually like something that you probably should do when you have transmutation in the deck. You should dedicate quite a bit of energy to it. Like you may need to get some
You
guaranteed
should.
value out of the turn with the cards in your hand, but then you just transmute the rest of the energy away instead of getting low value out of other cards in your hand. It's the colorless cards are good, and they're good
Right.
most of the time. You should
But
probably
again,
use
like you have to draw
transmutation when
into
it's in
the
your
card,
deck.
you have to play it, and you don't know what it is. So it's just like, is it worth taking this over other blessings with a downside? Like hell no. And then violence is fine. I think
Violence is in my opinion, in Act One, a worse secret weapon. I need to
Yeah.
spread my attacks out over turns.
Yep. No, yeah, it's probably just like actively bad in a lot of cases. Actually, like in the late game, it can be nice because you just kind of want to sometimes get attacks out of the draw pile. Like if you get violence from toolbox and you don't have attacks you have basically all your attacks that you don't want to draw into. Like I've gotten that where it's just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna take violence to get all my attacks out of the draw pile for first cycle, which is really cool.
It's really good to use it not to draw the attacks, but to remove the attacks from the rest of your draws for a whole cycle. It's awesome, and it upgrades to 4, which is like not necessary. Pretty much not necessary. This upgrade is like this does not introduce upgrade debt, so this one's fine, but I don't
Again,
like
it's
it as
not
much.
something
Thank you
that
so
you
much
wanna
for that
take
follow,
down.
friend. I don't like it
It's
better
not-
than Secret Weapon in Act 1.
No, and it's also just again not a card that you want to take a downside for over, and also like take it over other blessings, right? So in terms of cards here that are actually worth it, it's basically exactly Apotheosis, Hand of Greed, Master of Strategy, and Secret Technique, and that's it. So there's 4 out of 15 that are like worth it a little bit, but even then, it's only really 2 out of 15, right? Which is like Apotheosis and Hand of Greed. So
Yeah.
it's just like so mediocre on average. This one.
Yeah, like Secret Technique and Secret Weapon, we love them. They're great cards, but in Act 1, they're too slow probably because they need the support of additional cards that are
Yep.
worth seeking out of the draw pile that you also don't draw fast enough.
Yep. Okay, so
No, Shuffler, we're not doing
colored
math
cards
here
out of
on
the
that
way.
stuff.
While we're here, do we want to just go ahead and get rare relics out of the way as well?
Pull this back up real quick and take a peek. What is oh yeah, that's where we are. That's where we are, and then we will cover the actual downsides specifically with a little bit of discussion, and that wraps it up. So random rare relic.
Yep.
And again, this one's going to be like a 1x1 thing, like we did with common relic. So, but we'll probably fly through these a little bit faster because the
Yep.
value proposition on rare relics is a lot easier to evaluate than the common relics.
I'm gonna put my calculator up here, and so there, in terms of rare relics that you can encounter with any specific class, it's roughly 30. So I'm just gonna put 30 here. So we'll just talk about every single one of these as like, is it a 1 or a 0 or a 0.5 or a 1.5, and then I'll just add them all up basically, right?
Yes.
So
Bird-faced urn. Okay, that one. This is one of the more complicated ones, honestly, because it's pretty great, but like in Act
Mhm.
1, it's hard to justify taking a power card at all if it's not called Inflame, Footwork, or Defrag.
Yep. Or like if you're playing Watcher, you can pick Foresight, because you can just do that because they're strong, or like a Devotion.
Burn-faced urn. Sorry, Praetoria. Calipers is a no for Act 1. I think Bird-faced urn is like maybe I'd give it a half a point because like it can be like Blood Vial.
Yep. Calipers is definitely no for Act 1. Like the getting Calipers is getting Calipers worth making it like a 0.5 just because you have Calipers in your deck now.
It takes Calipers. It's really hard to have a deck that can pay off Calipers before the Act 2 boss.
Yep.
And if you're starting on floor 0 thinking in terms of Calipers things, then it probably misdirects your deck building. So I think honestly, it's probably bad to see it on floor 0, but it's probably still worth half a point because Calipers is Calipers.
Okay.
Captain's Wheel, big fat huge point.
That's a huge point. Agreed. Champ
yeah,
Belt
big fat
also
huge point. Yeah, absolutely. Apply weak. Good. Period. Apply weak, and it's Ironclad only, and you start with Bash in the deck, and yeah, apply weak. 100%. Love it. Charon's Ashes.
Good.
Still very good. It's always at least 3 damage AOE because of
Ascender's Bane.
Because of Ascender's Bane, and it makes Slime Boss better. It's so weird how much better it makes Slime Boss. Just having 3 AoE damage in almost any hand is like probably better than block for 3, right? It's just insanely good. And Ironclad, honestly, Charon's Ashes allows you to start saying, well, I'm just gonna start taking exhaust things now. Like I don't have to wait until I get things start rolling. I could just start doing it now. So definitely whole point there. Cloak Clasp, huge point. Passive block that isn't conditional the way Orichalcum is, huge point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would be cool almost putting that at 1.5, but yeah, 1 point, sure, fine.
Dead branch, yeah, absolutely a whole point.
Yeah, maybe even 1.5. Like
you could say that. You could say that. I would not be upset if somebody tried to convince me that Dead Branch is worth 2 points as a start. But I think we should limit it to 1 for a relic though. Like half point, 0 point, or a whole point.
Duvu Doll is probably just a point. It's like a low point, but it's a point.
It's technically better than Vajra.
Yeah, yeah.
Emotion chip, point. Because this from Niao means that you still have Cracked Core, which means that you get an extra activation of Cracked Core because it's very hard to full block every turn in Act 1, which means that you get like 1, 2, 3 sometimes extra activations of your single Zap Orb. It's absolutely worthwhile. It might even this might even convince you to stop dual casting it, like, and remove dual cast even sometimes. It's really good.
Yep. It's like 1.5, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Helix, amazing.
If Dead Branch is 1, then Helix is 1.
Yes.
Okay.
That's like we're maxing we're setting a ceiling at 1 for all of these things.
Okay, fine. I mean, if the ceiling is 1, then Duvu Doll is like 0.5, right? So
yes, because of the downside that you have to accept in order to get this from the owl. Gambling chip, huge fat 1 point. Like it just mulligan as much of your first turn as you want. It's Gambling chip is insane. Act 1, Act 2, right. Act 3, Act 4, it doesn't matter. It's every floor. Gambling chip is insane. Ginger is, I give it a half a point because it doesn't really pay off that much in Act 1.
Yep, sure.
I do agree, guys, that I think Calipers in Act 1 is a 0. And I think that it may actually misdirect your deck building. But I don't know. Things in your relic bar probably get extra bonus points just for being in your relic bar instead of in your cards. Yeah. And Calipers, the ceiling on Calipers is pretty high. And you can get Calipers value in Act 1 in some combats. Like
the Dumbbell is a 1.
Absolutely. It's very good. If you lift 3 times in Act 1, you've done insane things to your deck. GoldenEye, it's a 1. Like it just incentivizes you to go ahead and grab one more scry card earlier than you normally might do so, but it just makes Cut Through Fate so much better and Just Lucky so much better and Third Eye so much better already that definitely grab it. Kidlit, it's mostly in terms of Act 1 only. It's because you're getting it from Niao. This is up against other Niao blessings. Ice Cream, Act 1, a little bit weird, but it's not that hard to get value out of Act 1 Ice Cream. I think I give it a 1 anyway.
Yep.
Incense Burner, really hard to set up in Act 1. It's hard to stall turns and wait for the right turn on it, but it kind of doesn't require it in Act 1 either. Pretty much like you don't need to really set this up until you're going up against the boss. And then it's still kind of iffy because any turn that it blocks for you is probably a fine turn.
So I kind of just like blazed through these just like really quick, and I came up with 29. So like let's assume that we can call some of them 0.5s. Like we're still at like virtually like 80% or higher. 80% at the absolute lowest, you're getting something that you're happy with.
Yeah.
For the down.
Like all of the relics for the most part are upsides. They're worth trading gold, max HP, and often damage for.
Yep, absolutely.
So Lizard Tail is way up there. But like you probably need to pay off Lizard Tail in Act 1. If you don't pay off Lizard Tail in Act 1, then that's fine. But if you aren't trying to use Lizard Tail the way that you try to use Fairy Bottle in Act 1 to get value out of a harder path, then you've actually kind of tossed away the value of a revive in a lot of senses, because Act 1 is like snowball effect. Snowball.
Absolutely.
Magic Flower's insane. Mango, 14 HP is nothing to scoff at. I'm good for that. Old Coin's insane. Peace Pipe probably doesn't pay off in Act 1.
On floor 0 though?
But like it probably doesn't pay off on Act 1 unless you get offered card rewards that say like loops or infinites and things. Because if you can sacrifice upgrades to go into like big loops or infinites, then
Yep.
Peace Pipe is worth so much. But if you're not offered card rewards that say you're allowed to go Peace Pipe on things, then it almost never pays off throughout the run until like mid to late Act 3 sometimes.
Yeah.
Pocket Watch, absolutely insane. I think Pocket Watch tells you to honestly go like for a 4 or 5 elite path.
Oh my god. Yeah, Pocket Watch is nuts. Prayer Wheel, obviously, floor 0 Prayer Wheel is like almost run winning by itself.
Yeah, it pretty much is. 2 chances at card reward screens per floor is just unbelievably strong. Shovel is good, but like Silent,
I mean,
I don't think is very much allowed to shovel and dig over upgrade. Like you have to really high roll the relics out of Shovel with Silent specifically. The other classes I'm a little iffier on, but Silent in particular, I think that Shovel probably is a sour start.
Yeah, I mean, Shovel is just like usually, unless your upgrade's really good, usually a random relic is better than your best upgrade.
Yeah, unless you're Silent when you need like every upgrade is crucial just to make that card balanced against Ascension 20 period.
Taking your own grave. But
Pool of relics is all of them except shop or event specific relics.
Shop, event, and boss.
Oh, and boss. Sorry, yeah. Stone Calendar is fine.
Dig up Sneck a lot.
Yeah, that'd be insane. Stone Calendar's fine. It's not something that stands out really strongly, but like 52 damage is good. 52 damage is good. This is gonna mostly pay off in Lagavulin Centuries and your boss fights, where it's pretty much so high value in those 3 fights alone that you're happy to have it in the deck.
Yeah.
Slime Boss too. Slime Boss loves this.
In the Watcher context, though, like those fights never even last that long. So.
Yeah, true. But later in the game, if you're like when you're like mid game, Stone Calendar for Watcher is pretty solid.
Oh yeah, you can. I mean, you can absolutely pay it off in either like a maybe I mean not really the Act 2 boss fights. It could actually be actively bad in Champ, but it's going to be pretty decent for you in Collector potentially. If that's going a little long, Automaton potentially could be pretty good, and also just Act 3 and Act 4 like. It could get some value there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Specimen is a DIY build your own corpse explosion, and that's pretty good. You like that.
Yep.
But as far as Act 1 goes, it's a little tough to get value out of it, but it's still I'd still rate it pretty highly because Silent, one of her core mechanics is poison. You pretty much click a poison card the first time you see a poison card for the most part. So this ends up working out more often than not, but it's a very slow start in terms of power in the relic bar for Silent in Act 1. Thread Needle, again, passive block is insane, and 4 in Act 1, 4 passive block is like pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Like it's really hard to lose your plated armor in Act 1 in most combats. It's pretty easy to block just really enough to save it.
It has awesome synergy with Wave of the Hand for Watcher, which is like worth mentioning just because that synergy is so insane.
Yeah. So Tingsha is much worse than Ashes.
It's way worse than Ashes.
It's worse than Ashes. It's worse than Specimen. It's like Tingsha's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Tori's obviously insane.
You're fine. Yeah, Tori, you love to see it. Tough bandages. It's super good, but in Act 1, you mostly just get a survivor upgrade out of it.
Right, but that's not even that bad, honestly.
Thanks for coming, Azoth.
It's not good, but it's not like the worst thing.
Yeah, mostly you just get an upgrade out of survivor with it.
Yeah.
But it does encourage you to do something that I think is very important for Silent, and click more discard.
Yep, and blocking.
So
It's just awesome. Passive block.
yeah, block.
Yeah,
Yeah, passive block is just pretty insane anyway. Tungsten rod, that's fantastic, amazing.
it's great. It
Um,
also has niche benefits of like the damage taking events get, like Knowing Skull and Necronomicon, or not Necronomicon, but the book event. Cursed
yeah.
Tome is technically the name.
Turnip for slime boss is like the best case scenario in Act 1, and it's
Yep.
still not that good because you don't want to play block
That's a
cards
great late
in
game
slime boss most of the time. But like
But
late game, this and Calipers are kind of on the same page as like improving your block core later.
yeah,
But in Act 1,
yep.
they're kind of passive, not they don't actually make like passive block the way that like Rod or Bandages or Cloak Clasp do. So little lower on the scale for Act 1, but like you're happy to see it. It's a rare relic, and that's about it. Unceasing Top is not even a blessing.
No, that's terrible.
Like
And
this is skipping your blessing and taking a downside for it. And Wing Boots is insane, but does it pay off in Act 1 if you're not Watcher? Most of the time, no.
It absolutely can. It absolutely can. It can allow you to take an extra elite if you just like go, if you can do like elite campfire. The thing that I think is really powerful about Wing Boots is if things go bad, you can like nope out of there.
Yeah, I think that it opens up your I think it opens up your pathing options so strongly that it's very, very good in Act 1. But there are also a lot of Act 1s where like jumping off the path that you have chosen doesn't provide anything unless like things go completely to crap and you need to back off and go get like shot value or a rest site instead of another elite, or maybe you're dodging an event or a hard hallway, and like sometimes there's value in that just because like there's more guaranteed value in an elite or a shop or a campfire than a hard pull in an event. So sometimes that's okay, but it's kind of a mid-tier trade-off. Sometimes just getting an extra upgrade out of Wing Boots in Act 1 is kind of worthwhile, because usually what you're doing is you're taking an extra upgrade because that upgrade leads directly into an elite. So like you either trade an elite, like you trade, what you do there is you kind of like trade an elite event or elite hard pull for campfire elite. So it's usually just like Wing Boots is pretty insane.
Yep.
So yeah, Rare Relic, honestly, if we pull this back up here,
on average,
Rare
it's
Relic
very good.
On average is pretty insanely good. It's very, very nice, and it's up against, max HP, which is like, if you prefer Rare Relic over other options, max HP is take it every single time. Take damage. Take damage, you probably want the one that is a passive block option more than anything else, but Ironclad probably doesn't care, because anything that isn't Unceasing Top for Ironclad makes, you probably just heal back all of the damage that you took, so it's fine. And Lose Gold also is probably better than Lose Max HP.
Yep, and then let's talk about, finally, I guess we'll talk about the curse, right?
Yeah, the curse. This is the end of part 1 of the discussion here, guys. The curse downside for the big Niao blessing. The curse is...
So do you want to open up with the curse?
Oh my god, Merle. I don't even know how to start. I don't know how to start.
Well, I can start. Curses suck, because not only are they sometimes actively detrimental to your combats on top of just meaning that you have to draw into them, but you have to spend gold / a card remove to remove them. And not only does that mean that you have to spend those resources to remove them, and you might want to try to prioritize doing that, on top of all of that, you're missing out on your next, like your first remove, which is another thing that's like super, super important. So the curse downside is like so ridiculously terrible that there's like almost no like benefit that is worth it, essentially.
Yeah, you guys out there will note that as we talked about the big blessings with the downside, we pretty much put them all in context of taking damage, losing max HP, or giving up your 99 gold. we almost didn't mention the curse downside at all for this reason. It is so detrimental to put a curse in the deck that it can actually, no matter how good the reward, the blessing turns out being, it can lose the run.
Yep.
Curses are so terrible. You have to see, I shouldn't say with 100% certainty, but you probably have to see the curse fountain to justify this, to like make this work out in your favor. Because going behind on your card removes is terrible. Losing the 75 gold in a shop and increasing the cost of card removes for all future removes is terrible. You have to make up for that by kind of favoring events so that you can get more like transforms and free-ish card removes or discounted card removes. Clumsy is the only special case for it.
Yep. Clumsy's better than Strike in the late game, which is funny. But yeah, it's all just like, it's so bad. It's
even
actually
Blue Candle. Even Blue Candle doesn't justify this. Darkstone Parry app can't justify this because you can't have it before you get this curse.
You can't have Blue Candle.
Yeah, right. But like you can get Blue Candle in the act,
sure.
Like before you're able to find a card remove or whatever, and you can say, okay, now I can exhaust this, so I can go strike removes instead. Like Duvu Doll. Also, I don't think pays this off. I think the downside is too big getting started in Act 1.
Akanudo didn't even talk about the worst curse, which is Normality. I mean, for Act 1, it's not that bad, but Normality is just like so horrible.
Yeah, in a vacuum, I think it's like... I think it's never take curse.
No, you just can't do it. Because, like, again, you know, everything's against boss swap, and if curse is your best option, like, boss swap is a trillion times better. And we'll talk about that when we talk about boss swap next.
Yeah.
And
so,
but I just like, as like sort of the ending to this discussion, essentially what the next part is going to be is sort of that, like, and we've been sort of alluding to this throughout everything here, where we're saying like there's better options, there's better options, there's better options. Like boss swap is like 95% of the time like that better option, right? And we'll talk about why that's the case
in the next segment when we come back for another discussion. We're not going